Yeah, I mean, it's just Luke Ford and the dangers of e-personality. And he's an introvert, incel or whatever. And when he comes out on the internet, he has this, like the dark side of his subconscious becomes conscious. I mean, to me, it's obvious. It's what happens. It's what's happening to you on the same way. But your unconscious, your subconscious is different than Gandalf's subconscious.
Logic and science dictate that not only consciousness doesn't exist, consciousness is in fact scientifically impossible. And like, yes, it is going to involve math and calculus and science and computer programming. I'm sorry. And that have different implications of the process with the connection between the levels of a person's soul and how it reincarnates.
But I'm not going to spur on the issue because I'm not a woman. It's not my issue.
About how one day you're going to fulfill the Canadian dream or the American dream. So you watch Seinfeld and say, oh, I could do it. I'm going to go out tomorrow and go to work and have a great day, and I'm going to be successful. And one day I'm going to have my own apartment. I'm going to have my own parties with my own friends over, and I'm going to have my own possessions. I'm going to see things that I want and just buy them.
Yeah, but that's just so to say, a worthless opinion of yours.
Hello, we are back for Weekend Review with the one and only Doooovid. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today for episode, where are we at now? Episode number 117. Wow, feels like we just started yesterday. Awesome times, always fun to hear the insights and musings of Doooovid, in my opinion, one of the best pundits out there. So without further ado, we'll hand it over to him for the introductions. Thanks so much for being with us here tonight, Doooovid.
Hey, good to be back. Another week. Kind of depressed this week. I think, like America here, it's kind of spiraling out of control with like the Afghanistan, the weather. You just feel the culmination of bad karma. Weird colors outside. It's like a interesting haze, like just a storm and wet, but it looks like COVID-19 is about to rampage back. And maybe we'll look at these charts, but just looking at the chart, it looks like it's going to be worse than ever. It looks like we're probably headed for another wave, and maybe we'll take a look at the chart, but the charts seem pretty clear that it's going to be bad. It's probably going to be worse than it was last year, and like God forbid, Dr. Fauci's on the news saying it's probably going to be 100,000 more deaths by January 1st, and unfortunately, it could be much worse than that. And I'll try to show why. So, besides for the collapse of the United States, the collapse of humanity, impending, doom, my research going pretty good. Like, I spend most of my time
well, that's what you got to do when the world is imploding. You got to just double down with the studying and keep your nose clean and chin up for when you can finally start rebuilding, right? I can't wait to hear about all that. Do you want to do the chant first, or what do you think? Because I just think it's nice to have the chant right at the beginning because it sort of grounds us.
Yeah, so I haven't told a story in a while, and maybe I'll tell two quick stories. I mentioned, I did Charles Moskowitz facing the banhammer, so we're on a backup channel, but I spoke with Charles Moskowitz. I shared that on my Twitter, social media. Luke Ford also faced the banhammer. Memes faced the banhammer. For actually sharing.
Yeah, but wasn't that for him being like half naked and flexing? Hey, what's up, Paul? Nice to see you, bud. I didn't catch the whole thing because I think a lot of his videos, frankly, don't make a whole heck of a lot of sense, and he's not alone. But it wasn't it for nudity and indecency of some sort. Did you actually catch the reason? Like, I didn't think it was
both of them,
anything actually he said.
Them was for the same reason. It was for sharing a New York Times article that was too sexually explicit. So the New York Times article might have had nudity, but it wasn't anything in the video. It was a link that he shared to a New York Times article, and the New York Times article I think had nudity, and Luke Ford also. Different New York Times article memes was something for months ago. Luke Ford something this week, but ironically, my mother gets the New York Times, so I have so Meme wants to hop on. He could explain it himself. I just thought I'd mention that. I had a chess stream on my channel. My new friends from Moscow and Jerusalem, Zaraza calls herself a very strong female chess player from Moscow, and Igor Bugmate from Jerusalem, and he translated for me because her English, she doesn't speak English really more than a few words. So I had a friend in Jerusalem who was trilingual, and he translated back between English and Russian, and some chess training, chess strategy. I mentioned some of the stuff about multiple truth hypothesis decision making that really you have to be kind of an expert chess player to understand. I mentioned some of these ideas. I don't really go too much into the chess, and it's a lot of translation, so it's probably unwatchable for your average person because it's like half Russian, half English, and
I saw that you did that. I thought that was super cool, like the outreach and bilingual stuff with the chess. That was great.
Yeah, and I mean, chess is a pretty unfriendly game. It's competitive. Like as a chess coach, like I like teaching chess to teach cognitive skills, decision making, but it's also competitive, and it's very dependent upon winning, and winning competition zero sum because not everybody could win, and so it's tendency to be unfriendly, and then even if you are winning, that just gives more incentives to the other people who want to be winning, and creates a pretty unfriendly atmosphere. And it's probably also my read into karma. You're playing international chess competition, just seeing kind of how unfriendly the world is, how happy people are at each other's demise. The rise of winners, the fall, the rise and fall of various people, and who's happy, who's sad about that. But we can talk about that more. So maybe in the spirit, the high holidays are coming up again soon. Next week, the week after this, will be the Jewish New Year's. So Jennifer showed that Avril stream on friendship, so we could talk about friendship and my kind of negative views, like about on laughter. What does friendship really mean? But I think I've told both of these stories before, but I'll tell them very quickly. So one's the famous Sadi Gaon about 1,200 years ago in Babylon. I think Sadi was one of the heads of the academy when it was still in Babylon before it migrated to Spain and to Europe. And at some point, he was kind of a renunciate, just traveling around. And he was in a hotel, and he went, like a normal lower middle class person, kind of like a pauper, indiscreet. And the hotel owner gave him regular service, and when he got up in the morning, there was a crowd outside waiting for him, because he was the famous Sadi Gaon, the head of the rabbinic academy, so that people wanted to hear him speak in his wisdom, get blessings. And the owner of the inn profusely apologized to him, saying, had I known you were the great Sadi Gaon, I would have treated you so much better. I just gave you the normal treatment, but had I known that you were such, the great Sadi Gaon, I would have given you the royal treatment. And Sadi Gaon's like, no problem. And then he, I guess, as the story goes, he like repents and falls and cries and turns to God and says the same thing to God. Like, had he known how great God was, how he lived his life and led himself, would have had to have been so much to a greater status, because from like a Judeo impersonalist concept, God is this ununderstandable infinite being, and as a finite being, our understanding of God is always less than accurate. So as we understand God better, we can recognize, oh, I wasn't serving God as good as I should have been serving, because I didn't realize the true glory of God. So I've told that story. It's related to repentance and the high holidays, and then also related to friendship. Um, that the verse in the Bible says you should love your neighbor like yourself because I am the Lord your God. And so I think it's a rabbi's called the Oav Yisrael. I have to check his name. Hasidic rabbi in Eastern Europe, like 200 years ago, and his commentary on the verse. What does God have to do with this? And I was thinking that Avril said that friendship is contagious. When you have a good friendship going, other people want in on it. So the story in Eastern Europe was that there were two friends, just average countryside Jews, nothing special, and one of them was falsely charged with a crime and was going to be sentenced to death. And the local poets, I guess the nobility that oversaw the justice system was going to carry out the execution. And on the day of the execution, this man's friend comes and says, "Stop! Wait! You can't execute this man. I'm the guilty party. He is innocent, and I am guilty." And so the local leaders are okay, fine. Stop the execution, and so we'll execute this man instead of him. And the story goes back and forth, and the two people argue. It's like, no, I'm the guilty party. Execute me and let my friend go free. And till eventually, the local nobility man says, "You could both go free on one condition, that you let me be your friend too." And the local nobility, seeing that these two people were willing to self-sacrifice, give up their life for the other one, so the other could go free. So that's extreme friendship. He wants in on it, and so that was um, this rabbi's interpretation of why God's name, when the Bible says, "You should love your friend like yourself, because I am the Lord your God." That two friends, when there's actual true friendship, love between bromance, that God Himself
Is that the
will
technical term?
God Himself will join the friendship. That that friendship is such a powerful thing that when there's true friendship, God Himself wants in on it. And so I was thinking that the Avril thing. So we talk about that, and maybe I'll do a quick two quick chants. So these are just simple two-part and actually very short two-part songs from the Sklen Rebbe. He used to sing these Motzi Shabbos every week. They were very popular, simple two-part tunes. And I'm not sure the origin, um, but so these are just 1 2 1 2, not like the regular Hero's Journey Hasidic ones that are A B C B with the three-part that mirror the Hero's Journey, but just a simple two-part with like a low introductory and high. You could also take it kind of like a Hero's Journey, but the Hero's Journey usually needs a third part where the person is taken away from the normal hustle and bustle of life, and given special wisdom before they're brought back in. So this just one has a high and low, but you could also see it as like the introduction of the hero, the signature of the hero, and then the high part, but without the dissonance third part creating where the hero is kind of removed and gains a new skill in order to be able to return and conquer. So yada da 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 yada da da dum, ay da yada da 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 dum, yada da da dum, ba da 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 dum, bum ba 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 bum bum, yada da 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 yada da da dum, ay ya yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da da dum, ay ya yada da 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 and there was two songs that they sung kind of common. We would sing that one for quite a few minutes, even repetitive, a good kind of meditative end of the week tune, preparing for the week, up and down bounce. So there was another one that was similar. I nine and I nine, I nine and I nine, I nine, 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 ya da 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 da. I nine and a num, I nine and a num, I nine, 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 ya na 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 num. I nine and a num, I nine and a num, I ya ya ya, ma da da. Ya da 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 dum, I nine and a num, I nine and a num, I ya ya mum, ba da 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 dum. Okay, so I didn't really feel like chanting. I was kind of down this week, so you just had those two kind of they're kind of
Well, you
upbeat.
could have fooled me. That was very uplifting.
It was kind of the purpose of chanting collective consciousness to, and it said like when we chanted those, we would chant those for minutes, like even like 10 minutes. So the power of Hasidic tunes to get a bunch of depressed, beat down Yidden to turn to God and be a little bit more happy. Because the more I think about things, the more pessimistic I am. The more kind of it's like, oh man, like we're headed for disaster. Every single thing, every single scenario that I analyze just tells me like we're going to war, the environment's going to collapse. Our leadership is corrupt and incompetent. And honestly, um, everything tells me that. So, but I do believe in God, and so you could be upbeat, and also possibly a disconnection from the body. That when you chant, it more puts you in tune with the soul, and so there's a disconnect from suffering and even death itself, like the drink, eat and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Could also be felt in the chanting, like I nine and I nine, I nine and I nine, I ya 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 da 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 dum. You could be like, okay, what does it matter? Even if I die tonight, even if my soul leaves my body, at least I'm connected to God. So
That song is worth being tortured to death for, isn't it? The pleasures of life are worth all the horrible downsides. And might I just ask you to perhaps consider the possibility that things that I was actually much more uncomfortable before things started to sort of fall apart, because back then people didn't have any clue what the heck was going on. So I was completely alone in knowing, and people were willing to be quite cruel. And they're not as willing to be as cruel. Yeah, sure, there's tons of cruelty still, but they're definitely not as willing to be as cruel. And there's more chance that things will get better because at least we're getting closer to understanding the role we're playing in the furtherance of the problems. Whereas before it was either just totally categorically blame somebody else or don't even acknowledge it's a problem. And memes, I saw you in the chat there. Just send you the link. You can come and tell us about what happened. But please be careful. I don't want to get this channel in trouble. I have no clue how a newspaper article could lead to problems, but I just, let's say, are on the side of hyper nervous wreck, ultra caution, so that we may continue our spiritual and philosophical activities here.
Well,
And
just
I'm not
because it
just
was
saying
linked to the
that.
New York Times. So I was in Israel, and this interesting guy, he actually was one of the people who told me about the Hare Krishnas, and he had mentioned that he had tried for years and years to get his family more interested in Judaism, and then someone gave him a recommendation that he should give a Jewish book to his family and highlight the sections. I've told this on Week in Review maybe even a few times, the dirty part. So he gave him the book of Jewish law, just the regular book of Jewish law, how to get up, how to go to bathroom, how to deal with the holidays and all the various things that we do in our day-to-day life. And he put little sticky cards on the parts that talk about sex. And God forbid, that's part of the Jewish book of laws, dealing with masturbation and relationship between man and his wife. And he said that was the very first time that he had positive reaction from his family. And after a few weeks, they actually contacted him and asked him for more literature. So mention that with memes, and okay, so you're linking a New York Times article, but the New York Times article is, maybe has nudity, maybe is lewd, talking about pornography, or whatever it was, and you got banned. And even but it was the New York Times article, but it was still a lewd subject, and I guess it was still enough to evoke the ban hammer.
Well, apparently I made some people angry because, yes, hey guys, what's going on? Good to see you all. Thank you for the link. But essentially what happened is I was coming back, I was putting together a workout video, and as soon as I go into YouTube, I'm like, oh, what's this? You've received a community guideline strike. I'm like, all right, well, let's see. It was on an 8-month-old video. It was entitled Visa and MasterCard Pull Out of Pornhub, which was accurate and apparently maybe even hyperbolic to some people. But what I found was interesting, and again, like, this was a warning because it's my first time with this situation happening, and I just found it interesting that it apparently was because of a link. Now, to be fair, that link in it within the New York Times article that I was citing, it was an opinion piece, but there was no, I went back to double check that, Doovid, because initially I was like, oh, is there nudity in it? But even with in the article, it did address some distressing situations. But at the same time, I think what triggered it, if this happened to be an algorithmic ding, was the fact that within the title, it had the, as some would refer to as, grape in it. Now, I did acknowledge that within the video. I did even say the full word once. But one of the reasons why I did the video was this was important. There was an issue on Pornhub. That's why they took down 10 million videos. That's why actually the 3 things within the article that the author was citing, as far as I can see, they have and or are in the process of continuing to be implemented, because there were issues. There are still issues. This is an important thing that should be addressed, and that's one of the reasons I also reached out to Team YouTube on Twitter to make sure that citing a credible source while engaging in journalism, the paper of record, the New York Times, I would hope that there wouldn't be an issue with something like that, because if we can't really cite sources, and again, I changed it to 18 plus out of abundance of caution, if that's what we need to do, then fine, but it's like there are issues within society, and we hope to correct them. How can we correct them? We're not allowed to talk about them, or if we talk about them when we want proper sourcing. I'm just saying, I think this sets a very bad look. That's all.
On a slightly tangential topic, I am curious as to why it appears that certain people who really don't appear to be that discerning in their sources of information also, for some reason, don't trust Wikipedia. They have an issue with citing that, even if it's for like the most literally uncontroversial thing you could ever imagine. But anyway, appreciate your explanation there. So really glad to have you on the show.
I've seen Teen Wolf in some of their meetings just as a general guidance for just random topic. It's like, all right, what's this? These are the definitions. We can look into this further as links. Heck, one of my old college professors, he's like, Wikipedia is one of the greatest things ever, just because it's like, all right, it's a free encyclopedia. And you know what? If you want to delve in deeper, yeah.
Use your brain. It's like people are going to make edits for certain things, and it's a sort of a probability. It's like, what's the probability that somebody who edited this last didn't completely shit it up? And for some stuff, the probability that it has been shitted up is pretty high. But for other stuff, not really. But like, it's actually kind of, it is a bit becoming worse because people are losing debates to me and then changing Wikipedia entries. If Wikipedia is not fucking trustworthy, what the fuck do I cite? It's like the only reason I'm citing Wiki is so you shut your mouth, right?
Well, it's a quick, easy to go. If there are further things, like, all right, well, then you delve into the journal that are being cited there and everything. But as just a quick thing, it's like, all right, we're looking at a particular mathematical thing or something here. If it's something very recent and controversial, yeah, I understand. Okay, maybe that's not the best thing, but it's like you're saying, it's like, all right, this is a thing that's been a thing that people really haven't argued about until
it's like the Copenhagen interpretation. How many times can you reasonably update the Copenhagen interpretation? It's been updated like a lot of times to the point where I can't cite that anymore because it's become a complete clusterfuck of nonsense gibberish. There's like citation needed, citation needed, citation needed. It's like, okay, Well, what are we doing? You're going to go to a textbook? Like, it's just really making the problem of authority much clearer, which is making me obviously ultra happy. But yeah, what else is new, memes? Have you put any new videos out this week about the knowledge? I think I saw one last week, and I might have played it where you were all excited about stuff. But has there been progress?
Well, it's
that or anything?
and I need to do more actual like work and calculations. I went back and started listening to some of the Wolfram summer school things and some of the things he had on, and I just kind of glanced over them real quick. I'm like, all right, it has these people. I don't necessarily know who these people are, but then when I listen to the first like 20 seconds of the video, it's like, all right, this person works in knot theory. This other person is a geometrical. I still need to finish one of the videos, but like they're citing particular things like, well, if you're able to solve this, you can either like solve for loop quantum gravity, or maybe this might help string theory or something. I'm like, all right, well, if there's additional knowledge that these folks didn't have, and we might have access to things that might actually fit these models, let's give it a try.
No, have you realized people don't actually understand what science means, and they're just basically, I don't want to say they're reading a script, because I don't literally think every single person online is a shell, but it's essentially the same as shelling when you have no awareness of or understanding of what your beliefs mean. Like, if you can't build your own beliefs up from first principles, and by the way, almost no one can, you probably don't have any type of coherency to them. You're just memorizing stuff. You have no way to validate the logic up. So that's another thing I want to get to eventually. We don't have to get it on the show. Like, I don't know how much she was interested in this, but like, deep dive on logic. Major problems. I'm understanding why people don't understand what I'm saying is a science theory, when it should be fucking self-evident that it's a science theory. Because people just repeat the term science, 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 science. They don't actually know what it means.
I think a lot of folks just
it's mind-boggling, the level of shamelessness.
See, and again, I think my criticism is more towards the system itself and just the incentives we have just in place right now, because it seems to be incentivized that if you happen to be within a particular group or community, if most of the folks within that group or community are saying this, well, it very often might be in your same self-interest to say this, even if it's not necessarily what you believe. I think, unfortunately, a lot of times some of us go through extreme mental gymnastics to kind of justify some of the words coming out. Well, this is what everyone else is saying, so it's the safe thing to say, even if we may have internal. I know I've done this before. I'm just like, I'm not necessarily sure, but everyone else is saying this. So it's like when I said, I'm like, I was using the term black hole and singularity interchangeably. I'm like, you corrected me on that. And then I did additional research, and I'm like, oh.
Rationalizing versus reasoning.
I think
rationalizing is self-deception. This
think
is this and this and this, and oh, please be true, please be true, please be true. Whereas reasoning is like the opposite direction of like, what can I take out as false? What can I remove for sure as false to just reveal what's left over?
Well, I mean, that's even from what I can understand how they're trying to develop AI. Once you actually have something, you're like, all right, this is incorrect. We need to hold that to set the bounds of what is actually true. Because as soon as you identify the barriers there, it's like, all right, now you can start to fill it in, and you can continue to retune things and be like, all right, we're getting a better and better picture of reality. Because I think what often happens is, it bothers me when I hear folks say, oh, well, people are dumb or something like that, because that hasn't necessarily been my experience. My experience is people are smart. They know what they know, often well, but when they're confronted with something that they're unfamiliar with, they often just kind of revert to whatever folks that they know and trust are saying.
Okay, wait, why are you saying people are smart? Why are you saying people are smart? That's a lie.
There's a lot of really smart things. It also depends on how you define smart.
When you butter people up with lies, that's not good. That's eventually going to blue ball them. You want to be the guy somebody associates with spiritual blue balls. Don't tell them they're good people if they aren't giving you any evidence to think that. And plus, you give me a fucking hard time to make me look like more of a bitch by trying to mollify them with lies.
I think most folks are good people. That's just
exactly.
My opinion.
So you should keep that to yourself, because you can't substantiate it. You're just saying it as a cope. It's like we shouldn't be coping here. The cope is the long-term plan to get past the cognitive dissonance, not to create more. It's like most people are good people. It's like that sentence doesn't actually make any sense.
I think people just hear that they're bad people too often nowadays. I'm trying to balance
that
out.
May be true, but that isn't the same thing as saying that people are good people. So I would say the thing you just said, because I think there's truth in that. and it's valuable to point it out that constantly criticizing people has diminishing returns, and at a certain point it's not even returns anymore, right? Like the diminishing returns implies it's always something positive, like with a profit with a business, like you're still making money, it's just a little less each year that the increase is. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about flat out, like, what is it when it's not even diminishing returns? It's actually literally counterproductive. Is there a word for that?
I've seen some individuals come up with some incredibly brilliant things that I wouldn't have thought of, and very often society may view them as not all that bright. So,
what does that have to do with what I said?
I'm pushing back because I'm a disagreeable person.
Exactly. It's like everyone's nice, but you're a fucking asshole, dude. You're not nice, so why would you say everyone's nice? Like, come on,
I
just
said I
own
thought
it, man.
most
Like,
people are good people. I acknowledge I'm a dick. It's my middle name. Like, literally, it is.
okay, but you want to believe that other people are good, maybe because reasons. Is it just
you gotta have faith in
anyway,
something?
it's all good. Anyway, I put up a new diagram that I did. I was trying to explain to JD about how this is a very subtle point, like how we exist in a universe of photons and fermions, or whatever, bosons and fermions, massive and non-massive waveforms, essentially. And I was trying to like give a aesthetic appreciation of the dynamic, because you can't really talk about a volume or area, or you can't talk about anything that has to do with space or time really directly when you're talking about metaphysics, which is why it's so hard. So you have to find these sort of indirect words that, well, yeah, I mean, everything implies temporality and spatiality or whatever, because that's the only thing that exists. But we wanted at least a somewhat indirect with something like aesthetic rather than geometry, where there's sort of an implied whatever. That's the wrong example. I apologize. But the idea is that there's a continuum between massive and photonic, and it's a pure continuum. There's no boundary. There's no meaningful boundary in this continuum between photons and massive waveforms.
So we're going with the Titanic meme. It's like the glacier's bigger than it appears. Okay.
What I told him for the metaphor is imagine an iceberg, but remove all the water. So that's why I inverted the colors in that image. I don't know if you guys could see it. It's just on like the main screen or whatever, but I really liked it because it turned out as like really saffron type color when I inverted that image of an iceberg. I was like, whoa, it's almost saffron. Oh my God. Like it kind of pretty much is just under the water. So it's like, I wonder if that means something. It's like, because there's so much water, and you're always looking at the ocean, and then the Dharma is like the inverse transform function of the ocean planet ordering principle, and the colors like, ooh, secret. I don't know. I just had this whole big thing. And then I inverted the colors on my 3D PT to show that this really subtle thing that the monad is outside of reality, but inside of reality also, because it animates reality, but it's unobservable. So there's like this tail chasing thing. So I tried to show that too.
It looks pretty.
But yeah, the reason I had to use this metaphor was that life is, okay, I'll just write down what I haven't written down in my notes here. I don't want to mix it up here. Great. It's a static disequilibration, or a pseudo-static disequilibration of this primordial state. So whereas in the primordial state, there's no effective boundary between the photonic and the massive, it's just blah. Whereas with life, there does start to be defined an effective boundary, which is between the mind and the body. And even though the mind is really close to the body, it's distinct from it, because you don't feel like your body, because that would mean like you had as much feeling coming out of the bottom of your foot as the top of your head. Like clearly the feeling of sensation or whatever is in the, focused in the brain and stuff. So that narrowing is the pseudo-static disequilibration on this fundamental state. So we're like a harmonic resonance of this fundamental distribution thing. Anyway, thanks for listening. That was...
How do I spell disconfigure? I missed the word.
Disequilibration. So you know what equilibrium is, right? In chemistry and thermodynamics, like equilibrium is when the
disequilibrium. Okay.
In chemistry, equilibrium refers to specifically when the rate of the products forming into reactants and reactants forming into products becomes equal. So there's a homeostasis type of idea when you get into more complex systems like life that like is sort of be described as, because there's in thermodynamics there's a closed system and an open system, which you don't really know what to do with that because we can't define microstates. So you need a boundary for that, but we need this third type of system that's like semi-open, i.e. cyclic, i.e. a machine.
Since the second link on Google when I type in disequilibrium comes up to Investopedia, I'm assuming you're probably right with that. Just because if you can model economics onto a physical-based system, that seems to keep happening. That's a causal relationship. I'm sorry, I have no evidence of that.
You lost me at the end there.
Wait, what I'm saying is a lot of things within physics, people often use similar functions used in basically securities trading and stuff. That's how the whole Eric Weinstein thing is, like, he's using gauge invariance. It's like, what the heck does that mean? Well, depending on the currency, its value at a particular time and everything, you can basically map that out, and that's what essentially he was trying to do with geometric unity, at least as far as I understand.
Yeah, it's about the right basis, right? Like I was saying this for years in university, like this Copenhagen interpretation is a coordinate system. It's not a theory. It's a set of axioms. It's not a model, right? So maybe what you're trying to say is that they've been trying to find the right basis with which to formulate the eigenstates of reality.
I think a lot of time and effort has gone into the economic side of it because people make a boat ton of money.
That's why I said that price discovery and supply and demand, according to some economic schools, are part of natural law. So determining the price or the direction of markets as, so say, the result of the balancing of fundamental forces, and that material law could eventually be extracted to supply and demand and like entropy and various balances of forces that will cause commodities or prices to settle at certain points. But in terms of any global balance, that price discovery is a factual science that even though a number of fiat currency is arbitrary, that you have whatever the value that something is trading at in dollars, that the process of giving it a value in price discovery is, even as your economics you're going to argue is a hard science. And I mentioned that Dr. Brian Keating, he's funded.
Wait a minute, who's going to argue that economics is a hard science?
Well, most
Bubblegum
economics.
gun?
Well, most economists.
Okay.
And you mentioned that Brian Keating is funded by the Simon Institute, and Simon is the famous MIT mathematician that created algorithms and then went on to become a multi-billionaire from hedge funds and using those algorithms to run hedge funds that beat the market. But saying that conceivably you could reduce the stock market and the direction of currencies to solvable equations with enough information, and just like deterministic theories of physics, that economics is in reality a deterministic field. Given enough information, economics is a deterministic field.
Yeah, it's I just got to finish my laundry.
Even though physics isn't deterministic, economics somehow is. Do you need to go for good, or do you?
Yeah, I need to go. I might be able to come back, but all I want to say is I do think, well, economics could be a good guide in my opinion, because even with a metaphysics, as you were saying, it's just like you start getting diminishing returns. That sounds pretty much like the elasticity of demand. I even remember back in college when we were taking that. It's basically like
you
how
might
much
be right, but to assert that it's asserting that it's a hard science off the bat is not wise. That's all I'm saying. I think you're probably...
You and Doooovid can argue. I gotta run. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, see you later. Yeah, and in principle, it's very likely to be true that it's some of these concepts will be fungible with physics concepts, but to just assert it with no evidence is sort of seems like it maybe isn't true because of it being asserted in that manner. It's like nobody thinks economics is a hard science, Doooovid. Nobody thinks that. Like most people don't even think, people, if anything, they think chemistry, physics, and biology are hard sciences, and that's it. I don't know that anybody thinks anything else. Like I had logical, floggable, blobbable trying to convince me that this LARP with signals processing is a hard science, and I definitely don't agree with that. And I don't think most people in science would agree with that either. It would be cool if it could be, but that's like literally what Bubblegum Gun said, right? So it's like, why don't we try to maybe disprove? We could try to establish that, but I don't really think it's a self-evident truth. Like, is it
Well,
even
so
true
don't take advice from money from poor people.
not really
So-
about money?
Well, it is. I'm saying to some, some
Okay.
extent it is. You're saying that
Okay.
don't take advice from money and economics from poor people.
Well, that doesn't mean our economics is a hard science, and the fact that you're getting catty also, again, just proves that I'm right and you're being catty about it. So it's
Yeah, I
like,
mean, we've argued
okay,
about this before, so there's no need to be
I think you could establish
repetitive.
some connection. I question why you would assert that it's a hard science when literally nobody thinks that, rather than try to demonstrate it. Because
Well, I'm saying it's
why
the
not
law.
try to demonstrate which concepts are fungible rather than just assert it with no
Like,
basis?
economics uses the term law in a similar way that physics, the law of diminishing returns, the law of supply and demand, that these are factual laws that, like gravity, that supply and demand and diminishing returns are as scientific as gravity or Newtonian motion. That if we're looking, what do we know about the material realm? And you're listing certain things like we have the law of gravity, we have the law of Newtonian motion, and we have the law of diminishing returns, and we have the law of supply and demand, and yes, everything in the material realm operates in course and to the law of supply and demand and diminishing returns. And it's very possible to say like the first law, second law
so
of
materially,
thermodynamics would
materially.
would be you like a grand unification theory, that you might be able to demonstrate that the law of diminishing returns is corresponding to the law of entropy, and maybe the law of supply and demand, some sort of grand unification, but yeah, they're called laws, and from that extent that it's a law equal to any other scientific law.
So words mean nothing, and it's just
And
whatever
words mean
you want
something.
to
I'm
be
saying
true,
that
and
the
that's what
supply
I
and
have to
demand is
deal
a
with. That's
factual
cool.
supply and demand is a factual law
That's not
as
really
much
actually
as much
saying anything,
as
though.
much as any other known truth. You're saying, what does it mean a law? But you're saying like a known truth of the universe, and if you put it up there, like gravity, Newton's law of motion, thermodynamics, that the economic laws of supply and demand, diminishing returns are right up there with them. I mean, you could have your opinions, and Jennifer's entitled to her opinions, but we're saying no, they're laws of economics, and presumably just as true as any other truth that we know.
I don't know what to say to that, frankly.
I mean, you don't have to say anything. I'm saying like it's called the laws. I mean, you could say that, that everybody's dumb besides for you. But I'm saying like, what I'm saying is self-evident. Like anyone knows these are economic laws, and they're put forward in the same way as scientific laws. And you say like, no, I'm a real scientist, and economics aren't real scientists. Anyone who thinks otherwise is an idiot.
I've never met anybody who thought economics was a hard science. They might say it's a soft science, but even that, I'd say it's a bit like,
the laws of economics are
health science. Like when you go to school to be somebody who tells people how to work out at the gym, it's about as prestigious
science is just
as that.
a word. I make from a true statement that the law of supply and demand, the law of diminishing returns, is just as much of a law as any other true statement that we know to be true.
Then how come it can't be formalized in a formula?
It is. I mean, it's supply and demand.
Well, then let's see the formula, because you're just saying supply and demand. It's like inflation with Big Bang. It's like that's not a formula or a theory. That's a word. When you say supply and demand, that's not saying that it's a theory or a law or anything. It's just saying two
I mean,
words
we've
put
been through this
together.
before. I'm saying, like, I mean, God forbid you show your weak memory, because I mean, we've been through this before. I mean, if
And you
wanna
didn't
pop
have an
up,
answer
like,
then, and you
if you
don't
want
have
to
an
pop
answer
up,
now.
if you want to pop up like Wikipedia or any economics and just so the law of supply and demand, I mean, it's a mathematical relationship.
Does anybody in the chat think that economics is a hard science?
Hard science
I'd
is just
really
a
like to know.
terminology. I'm saying when you say law, the
Yeah, to
truth
distinguish it
value,
from soft science.
the truth value
Economics
of
is at best.
well, you could say, I don't know, in psychology, you don't really have laws like that. So economics has laws that you so to say, yes, everything in the material realm will correspond to the law of supply and demand and diminishing returns. Psychology, sociology, politics don't really have laws or statements in the same way like economics.
Now, you're
So I mean,
essentially saying conservation of various forms of energy.
no, I'm saying supply and demand
Right.
is a law, a truth
No.
value that is high in truth value as any other truth value that we know.
No, the
that,
truth
that
thing
humans
is
know.
that there's conservation of stuff. And then everything else is an abstraction
If you
upon
want to say
these
the law of
fundamental
the
conservation
conservation of
laws.
energy and mass
Well, it's
is,
conservation of causality. That's the most
and it's saying
fundamental
that
thing, is
the
conservation
law
of causality.
of supply and demand has just as high of a truth value as the law of conservation of energy.
So it's funny that you're all about the multiple truth hypothesis, but now it sounds like you want to put every single assertion claiming to be true on the same level.
I'm saying truth value, that even the law of gravity, the law of supply and demand, you're saying, like, no, I mean, the truth value of that isn't one. It's unlikely that the truth value of any of these laws is one. But they would say the law of supply and demand, that the truth value of it, I would say, is probably just as likely to be as high or higher than any of the laws of science, like Newtonian motion, gravity, conservation principles. That, and if you want to say the law of supply and demand is just a conservation principle, but if you're saying, oh, it's not a hard
They are
science,
all derivative
so I'm
principles
I'm
of the
putting in a
law of
mathematical
conservation of karma.
terminology
Yes,
of
that's
the truth value. So if
self-evident.
you say it's absolute, you're saying that it's kind of what Averell was saying about in a statement. But so if you want to say that the truth value of the laws of physics is one, means 100% true, undisputable. No, I doubt it. If you want to estimate what the truth value of gravity, the truth value of these statements is, as in the laws of economics, like supply and demand, diminishing returns, is probably just as high as any of the truth values of the laws we have in science. We got Ricardo in the chat saying that,
Yeah, I saw that.
don't take financial advice from poor people. So at least
Nice.
Ricardo has a bank account. You're saying, like, get a little
Cheese?
third party opinion from someone who could actually write a check, someone who actually has money to spend.
Nice. Well, it's good to see what's important. And I've got my
I mean, Samish is just saying economics is part of
diagram here.
social science. This dichotomy called like science, soft science, hard science, social sciences. That's why I'm using my expression truth value, that saying that it's a law and it will have a truth value based on how accurately it makes predictions and describes reality. And so Doovid is saying that the law of supply and demand and diminishing returns makes predictions just as well as any scientific law that we know. And here Jennifer has her law of the excluded middle.
Oh, I
Saying that
didn't say I agree with it. That
law
is something
meaning,
that is already existing.
I mean,
That
people
already
falsely
existed.
assume that, like, that's why you need the multiple truth hypothesis, that law means truth value of one. That but we're saying, like, no, we're saying, like, however we raise something up to call it a law, in objective reality, doesn't mean it's going to have a truth value of one. It just means it has an extremely high truth value.
Well, Samish doesn't agree, so rip. I don't know why I feel like you're trolling me here. It's like some sort of a troll. Whatever.
It's not true. I'm saying that. I mean, saying that's why you're for. So like the law, the law of supply and demand is a law as well predictive in power of any other piece of knowledge that humans know. And it's saying because you don't have money, you don't have investments, you're not sitting on a bunch of assets, you never thought about it, you don't know the power of the law of supply and demand.
Okay.
It's just something that a person not of means hasn't really thought of that much. And if you were a person of means, you would know that the law of supply and demand is one of the most powerful predictive pieces of knowledge that humans have.
I don't function in a zero-sum mentality. So I don't
Not
use
zero sum.
that
You don't have
model.
investments. You don't have.
The point is that I don't
You don't
look
have.
at
You don't
people
have
as
assets. You
in
don't
that
have large
sense.
amounts of property or
Listen to
ownership
me
in
for a second here.
companies or commodities
Oh
that
my
you don't give a
God.
crap about the law of supply and demands because you don't even have enough money to think about it. You're not thinking about where you're going to invest your money. You're not thinking about all these assets and ownerships of company that you have and whether they're going up and down. So you never even thought about this stuff, and you probably never will. God forbid, because you're going to die poor.
Okay.
God forbid.
Oh, I know you're just looking out for me, Doovid.
You could die poor. I'm saying like no. I mean, only poor people.
Hey,
would
can I
argue
just
with the law
explain
of
real
supply
quick
and demand.
where I'm coming from? Is that if I give somebody teachings, do I get dumber as a result? No.
Well, I mean, someone
I
listening
a
to you
lot
for
of the
financial
times
advice would get
get
dumber.
more.
No
I
offense,
get
but
better.
anyone going to you for financial advice is getting
This
dumber.
is-
That's why I say, like,
Okay,
do
can you
not
stop
get
with
financial
insanity,
advice
please?
from poor people.
Please,
Do not
please
get
stop with
financial
insanity.
advice
Okay,
from
yes.
poor people.
I'm not giving financial advice, by the way. I'm saying that that's not my mentality because I don't function in a zero-sum environment because knowledge is not zero-sum. Okay? It's
That's why I use the expression truth
not
value.
material. So
And
I
that's why
don't
said
conceive
that
of things
these
in a way that
economic
is
laws
not
have a
helpful
high
for me to
truth
conceive of
value
things.
as any other piece of information that we know.
Mr. White Male, man, I wish you'd change your name. It's so inflammatory. I don't know why you gotta demean yourself like that. What have you done? Given yourself a haircut? I don't know, dude. I do not know, but think about it. And hopefully it won't happen so much again in the future. Do not call me the K word because there's another person with who's known as the K word. I don't want anything to do with that person. Okay? So the excluded middle law is based on a bunch of literally insane assumptions that something about truth values being propositional. Who the hell came up with that idea? It makes no sense. Are equations propositional? Like the whole thing is simply nonsensical. So I basically tried to establish that if the law of excluded middle is true, then we can't know anything about quantum mechanics because quantum mechanics can be demonstrated not to function on the basis of this law. So does that make it a law? It's like, no, these things are all just in a grab bag. And that's why I actually like a title like multiple truth hypothesis or maybe multiple axiom approach or something along those lines, because really what philosophers should be doing is justifying their axioms every single time, unless they're affiliated with a particular school where they don't have to justify self-evident axioms like causality and existence. But you should definitely have to, because it's like, well, why'd you use that axiom, brah? It's like, was it actually the best axiom that you could have used? Probably not, because where would you have even figured out how to align the axioms to get the right answer? Because what's the right answer? Well, that's a whole other story, right? Like, how do we actually formulate what it is we want to say so that people believe us, i.e. compellingness? So that's why I started making these diagrams here that I was having some fun with in the T-Jump server, but that's probably over now. But, what can you do? But I think it's pretty compelling because it's like, this thing contradicts quantum, and quantum's really not as complicated as certain people might want to make it out to be. So when you're going to get the idea of what basically quantum mechanics is telling you, that stuff like excluded middle, it's like, well, where do we get the idea that something's either true or false? Like, how can we make that assumption? Not to mention it contradicts a bunch of pre-existing logical systems. Never a good idea to be inventing metaphysics that is literally going against something that already exists that's been demonstrated to work. So there is no really truth value of one, because truth is always relative to other competing truth statements, which are, that's why multiple truth hypothesis in a way is the right title. But it's like, well, what are we actually describing here? It's got to actually mean something to say that something's more true than something else, i.e. that you can demonstrate it, aka anecdotally instantiate a proof. Oh, awesome. Yeah, that was what I've been working on mostly. Obviously way more than just that, but what do you want to go next? Doovid, do you want to go over your articles?
Yeah, I'll do a screen share, and I just
Sounds
mentioned
good.
the value of saying person. Some of a Judeo concept, some karmatic systems look at a person's possession as an extension of the self. That so if you're a property owner, or your possessions, your business ownership, those are all extensions of yourself. And so a person who self is not extended into the material realm, and you look the karmatic imprint, from a Judeo understanding, or not just Judeo, but to many systems, is that the essential extension into the karmatic realm is through ownership. And that's why you could say things like supply and demand and diminishing returns or economic laws are factual laws, because the extension of self into property. And okay, so I had a bunch of interesting things. Is my screen share working?
Yes, and if the audience has any feedback, basically got it as big as I can, but I still got the comments there. So
Yeah, maybe just
if there's
close the
something that
comments.
comes up, I can close the comments temporarily. That's super important, like that. But for this bit, I think you're probably okay.
Okay, so I'll do the stuff that doesn't need the comments closed first. So here's Jake Turks, and he got his question with Jen Psaki, and basically he's fanning the flames of war for Biden. He's saying, how can Biden's so weak, and he's not going to smash the Taliban, even though the ISIS, that even though they just killed a bunch of our people. And so it's the ironic current, I guess, state of world affairs, where really it's only the Zionists left. Only the Zionists are left flaming the torches of war against ISIS or in Afghanistan. But he gets his question, and kind of like a Fox News question. It's not that good, but I thought I'd show that. Here was interesting. I show these. I finished those mathematical conscious video. This same man, Andrew Hahn, is also on that, and this is the neural basis of consciousness. And what is visible across the visual field, and that's also a scientific paper, and he's asking a question. Usually when we refer to qualia, that we ask the question about what does it mean to feel pain or to experience a color, and as opposed to what does it mean to experience three-dimensional space, what does it mean to think of our place within three-dimensional space, and actually quite mathematical causal model of the physical substrate, and looking at how the mind or brain might create this experience of placing us within 3 dimensions. So there's him giving a lecture, and the article is actually pretty good, pretty mathematical. Thought I had there's some pretty good charts, but I'll just leave it there. So it's in the chat. Encourage people more interested to read that. Here is the late morning show with Namarasa Das, the world's biggest Hare Krishna podcast. And here he has Sundar Gopal Das Semenhas from Germany, and he's asking a question about the fall of the jiva, and the question is bhakti inherent in the soul. And the question from Prabhupada and his disciple and his spiritual master, that love of Krishna is inherent in the soul and dormant in the soul. And it means that all people naturally love Krishna, and all you have to do is awaken that. And that's why things like chanting Hare Krishna is so powerful, because of the dormant trait of love of God within the soul. And then it's a dispute among followers of Krishna, this point of, and he's actually going to be doing a Zoom call. Maybe I'm going to try to get on it. I think he said September 18th, he's releasing a research paper. And the authorities from these are all gurus, acharyas of the last few hundred years. So it's more a question, the nature of the soul. It's most of the scripture. There's sources in the Vedas, but most of it is held from people, Ramanujacharya and later. But a very interesting, topic about the nature of the soul. Here is these graphical. I saw these a while back, and I didn't really watch them. But you have like maps and interesting history, Jewish history with maps. Might be, Henry Abramson is no difficult questions. So here's another one of no difficult questions, but more a secular approach. If Jennifer wants to go more in depth, open this back up. I was just reading the history of science, and I came across the tetrachrome curve, which comes from the Christian Huygens, and it's a mathematical function, as you can see in the wiki diagram, that in a certain curve, that no matter where you start the ball from, they're all going to land at the bottom at the same time, due to acceleration or the nature of the curve. And this has quite a few applicabilities in real life, and also like the pendulum, that certain things like a pendulum, if you start a pendulum from a certain length, that it will reach, it will have the same period, whether it has because of the acceleration and the higher speed. So it's semi-simple mathematics. So I thought if that was interesting to just do some, I mean, that's a little more than basic mathematics, but it's a pretty interesting thing.
It does look pretty cool.
Yeah, here is
Definitely.
I'll call it debate, a conversation with Roger Penrose and Alan Guth, multiverse or a cyclic universe. Be kind of like I guess a Big Bang that keeps on repeating, or multiverse. Here's a little thing on just National Geographic, and it was like an experiment to show how easily a rat could get from the sewage up into our toilets, God forbid. And another quick video about, we're talking about laughter and how rats laugh. So we mentioned rats are one of the animals that laugh. So you mentioned to Jennifer all this like bad news. So Michigan now has detected 2 EEE viruses that come in mosquitoes and are deadly. 1 out of 3 people who get this EEE virus die. And so they detected, I think, in horses, 2 of these. The number of deaths worldwide isn't that high. 2019 was a record year. In the U.S., 38 people were infected. And in 2019, 6 people in Michigan died. So this, pretty bad news. It's like you can't even go outside. There's these deadly mosquitoes. So it's not that bad yet. And I've been checking the Weather Channel. So here in Michigan, I check the Weather Channel constantly, and there's always severe weather. These days, you just got to check to say, like, am I going to lose power? Is my basement going to flood? So, God forbid. I was mentioning, I think it's to Jennifer before the show, it's probably going to keep on getting worse. And so I'm going to go over the New York Times article on climate change and the relationship to this, possibly mosquitoes, the virus, but certainly in terms of increased wind speed and rainfall. And so here's this new interview with Lieutenant Byrd, who was the one who, God forbid, shot and killed Ashley Babbitt. It was kind of weak. There's a full 38-minute interview. I don't know if Memes comes back and wants to talk about it, kind of like a deep dive. I keep on talking about violence. Probably we're going to see more violence, fall out of society. And this question, is this man a hero? Did Ashley Babbitt deserve to die? Should this man be punished for killing her, or should he be rewarded for killing her? And the dynamics of the karma of violence, and even the extreme violence of killing, and moralistic call on it in terms of saying, like, is this man a hero or a villain? And karmatically, how do you interpret these things? And possibly the racial dynamics, like America's a multicultural thing, saying, no, this man was defending the West against a blue-eyed woman who was an enemy of the West, because he was on the side of democracy and the various values of the West, even though the woman that he shot was genetically a Westerner. They didn't really look at it from that angle, but it's big news this week, and maybe we'll talk more about the karma of violence. And that's what violence falls into the laws of karma. So you're saying, like, you don't really have to be scared to talk about violence, because just because you're talking about violence doesn't mean you're going to do violence. Doesn't going to mean that violence is more likely to happen. Saying just like the laws of economics, the laws of karma are factual, and violence is just one of the manifestations of the laws of karma. So Ben Watkins was in the Capturing Christianity conference in Texas, and I debated on Theology Unleashed with Arjun. He actually came on Week in Review after that, or maybe he didn't come on Week in Review, maybe came on the Thursday night debate prep. And so he had an IRL debate, atheism versus Trent Horn, with the moderator of Capturing Christianity, and the PowerPoints, and people lined up for question and answer, kind of like a Ben Shapiro or something like that, where there's these people lining up to ask questions afterwards. So I encourage people to check that out. Here, another, Ben Watkins, another one. He was on Original Win Productions, talking about a discussion of the problem of divine hiddenness, which is similar to the problem of evil. If there is a God, why is God hidden? So it's a nice PowerPoint. So Ben Watkins knows his epistemology pretty good, and so just these PowerPoints. So I've been enjoying his appearances. So Theology Unleashed had Michael Cremo of The Forbidden Architect, and he came to University of Michigan, and Michigan State University, and Wayne State University, and actually drove him around. And he's one of the advisors on the planet of the Vedic Planetarium in Mayapur, funded by Alfred Ford. And he debated Erica, who I guess has been on Modern Day Debate, about the origin of humans. And he argues for certain archaeological evidence that humans is much older than evolution, and certain archaeological findings that would point to modern day man being hundreds of millions of years old, or at least hundreds of thousands of years old. So Erica defended the basic evolutionary understanding of
She's
of
got a
man.
pretty good she's a pretty good like actress, don't you think? Like, she can really project her voice and stuff.
Well, I
And
mean,
speak
she
with a lot
seemed
of
more kind of like
clarity.
straight science geek to me.
Absolutely. I mean, they're all pretty good actors, I'd say.
Here was just a video about IBM's Quantum System 1 being assembled in Japan from IBM Research. So you see, quantum computers. So IBM's got theirs and assembled in Japan. And here is a nice video on Columbia University, same where Vincent Racconello this week in virology, but this is the Herbert Irving Comprehensive Cancer Center, and just a nice overview on COVID-19 and the current variants. And so looking at, see a chart of the mutations and exactly what these mutations have done and changed to the virus, and why that's leading to different results. I watch probably still tens of hours every week on COVID-19, but this one had nice graphics and just overview on what's going on with the whatchamacallit, with the variants and vaccine. So here, mentioning laughter is bad character. So Kevin Michael Grace. Here, just a quick video of Kamala Harris in Taiwan being asked a question about what happened in Afghanistan, and she breaks out in laughter in the middle of the answer, talking about Americans dying. And so Kevin Michael Grace is taking that like, of course she's laughing and happy that Americans are dying. And but kind of the reading, laughter as bad character, laughter as some sort of cognitive dissonance. So very serious question about the death of Americans and tons of people in Afghanistan, and she breaks out laughing. And Kevin Michael Grace is probably questioning her patriotism, and would maybe a Doovidism as the laughter is some sort of indication of that. Here was a interesting conversation. Brett Stevens of the New York Times and Thane Rosenbaum on Shalom TV, and now he's dean of Carroll College, was at New York University. 92nd Y, if anyone's heard of him. And they're talking about the waning cultural power of Jewish Americans. And both of these men are kind of hopeful that Jewish Americans will regain their power, or that the decline of Jewish American cultural power is bad for America. But an interesting conversation. Here, another mind chat with Philip Goff, and this one includes Neil Seth, who is the originator of this kind of concept of consciousness as an hallucination, and he clarifies what he means by that. He is a materialist, and so that's a good video there for related to consciousness. I've been following, the mind chat, so it's only episode 5. I guess he's only been doing one a month. So, Neil Seth is a big name. I've went over some of his papers on my channel. Here's a video this week from the Royal Institute on how to build the universe, and kind of like on the periodic table, the nature of elementary particles, or what exactly are the building blocks. So a lot of links there. You could see in the chat that you could close the chat now, I guess, because all it is my links. But so now let me show these New York Times articles. So here is other one I meant to do last week, but here is what we know about climate change and hurricanes, and it's saying higher winds. There's solid scientific consensus that hurricanes are becoming more powerful, and stronger winds mean one of the things related to climate change is higher wind speed. And one of the factors determine strong a given storm ultimately comes if ocean surface temperature, because warmer water provides more energy that fuels storms, higher wind temperature. There's higher temperatures in the water. That's more energy that creates higher winds. And also here in Michigan, more rain, warming increases the amount of water vapor that the atmosphere could hold. In fact, every degree Celsius of warming allows the air to hold about 7% more water. So that's possibly like the rapid environmental changes that we've been seeing here in the world. If you look at some of the charts, that it starts going exponentially up in the 2020s. And if it's half a degree warmer already, that's already 3.5%. If it's already a degree warmer, that's already 7% more water in the air, and and that's an average over a year. So in a storm season, that could be much higher and increase the amount of rain significantly. The storms are slower, wider ranging, more volatile. So here's just some basic stuff about climatology and and what we're seeing here. And this I prepared a week before, but I didn't end up showing my links. So here is lessons of the census from lessons of the census from on Asians in America. So you could see, kind of the Chinese, Indian, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, other Asian groups, and you could see where they're congregated. So you can say most Asians are congregated in the East Coast and the West Coast and major urban areas. So you have some Georgia, but so here in Metro Detroit, more in Illinois, Minneapolis, but mostly in the East Coast, in the West Coast, and slight variance in the type of Asian. So you have many more Filipino and Japanese on the West Coast, and more Indian and Vietnamese on the East Coast. And you can see the difference in population of Asians from 1990 to 2020. And here you see Asians making up over 10% of the population in certain parts of the East Coast and West Coast, and smatterings all over the U.S. now, where there's larger Asian populations. Here is divided, so you see Indians, Chinese Indians, Filipino, Vietnamese. So currently, shaded area means the group is at least 0.5% of the population. Japanese are, I guess, more conglomerated in certain areas. Chinese, Indians are all over the place. Large Indian populations on the East and West Coast, but there's Indian communities now popping up all over the place, even in red areas. Filipinos also, Vietnamese, but you got Chinese 4 million in the U.S., Indian 4 million, Filipino 2.9 million, Vietnamese 1.8 million, Korean 1.5 million, Japanese 770,000, Pakistani almost 500,000, and here's an interesting thing about citizenship. So pink here, or orange, is not a citizen, green is naturalized citizen, and light blue is U.S. born citizen. So Chinese, about 1.5 million of the Chinese were born in the U.S. About 2 million of the Chinese were naturalized. Another 1.5 million of the Chinese living in America are not citizens. And Indians are even more. So almost 1.5 million of the Indians in America are not citizens. There's about 1 million Indians that were born in the U.S. and another 1.5 million Indians that are naturalized. So there's the largest amount of non-U.S. citizens for the Republican Hindu coalition of visas. Indians make up a extremely high percentage of foreign labor, of visa holders that are temporary visa holders. Also Filipinos, more in nursing. Indians more in like IT. Filipinos more in nursing. But percentage-wise, also like 500,000 Filipinos. They're not citizens. A lot of them are temporary work visa holders. And because Indians and Chinese, Vietnamese work in the U.S., they're more likely to get citizenship. So of all these Indians that aren't a citizen, they're a much higher percent chance that they'll actually become a naturalized citizen because they're working, jobs in America, and so to say, they're needed. But interesting point on culture. So here's some financial data. Talk about the money. So here, the median household income. Then you have household income above 200,000, household income below 40,000, home ownership rate, and college graduate. So Indians, median household income 123,700. 25% of Indian households have earned more than 200,000. Only 14% less than 40,000. 61% of Indian families are homeowners. That's my phone. I'm just going to let it ring. And 79% of Indians in the U.S. are college graduates. Only higher college graduates are Taiwanese, although their earning is much lower. The Indian median household income is substantially higher than any other Asian group. You see Filipinos almost at 100,000. Home ownership even higher than Indians, 72%, 83%. There's a Taiwanese. Sri Lankan, also relatively high median household income, even though only 50% are college graduates. And you see Burmese, Mongolian, Bhutanese are down by like 50,000. That might even be higher than your average U.S. citizen. So the national median household income is about 64,000. And so almost all of the Asian groups are doing better than your average American. Even Bangladeshis, who aren't necessarily looked at as the most successful of Asian immigrants to America, are doing better than your average American. And even Bangladeshi immigrants to America, 52% are college graduates. And although they do have a lower home ownership rate than your average American. So just interesting statistics, and look at the money. Look how wealthy Indians are here in America. And then here is just a distribution of median household income by Asian group, and you see Indians, in way over in naturalized citizens. So Indians who are not citizens, median household income is about 110,000. The same for U.S.-born citizens. The naturalized citizens, Indians, are already by 140,000. So those are Indians that have became naturalized citizens, and so they're extremely successful. See off the charts there, without a close second on all of these, the Indians in terms of financial success in America.
Is this because of the Aryan invasion, you figure? JK, keep going. Welcome, Krabby. We'll get to you in a minute when Doovid's done all of his presentations. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, so here's average age of Asian groups. So Japanese, much older, but younger than your average U.S. And the U.S. born citizens are quite young because just a note on Democrat, Republican. So of minorities, that Asians are like any minority, more likely to be Democrat than Republican, but more likely to be Republican than so like blacks or Jews. So I thought that was interesting. That was already from last week, and let me just show this real quick. Jennifer. I was mentioning we're talking monism, and I was reading the philosophy book, and I never put it together that way, although it's really obvious when you hear it, that Shankaracharya as a monist is saying that Brahma as monism, that Shankaracharya and saying Brahma is the origin of both the spiritual and material, and describing that as monism, which I guess I've heard that
Just
before.
to say there's saguna and nirguna, so it doesn't quite lend itself to perfect analogization. Analogization? I don't know if that's the word, but it's partially, but it may require more words to be defined before they match up 100%. But I'm glad that it's getting more clear for you.
Let me just read some definitions here. Monism, attribute of oneness or singleness to a concept. So your priority monism states that all existing things go back to a source that is distinct from them. In Neoplatonism, everything is derived from the one. In this view, only one thing is ontologically basic or prior to everything else. Existence monism posits that, strictly speaking, there exists only a single thing, the universe, which can be artificially or arbitrarily divided into many things, possibly parallel to pantheism. Substance monism asserts that a variety of existing things could be explained in terms of a single reality or substance. Substance monism posits that only one kind of stuff exists, although many things can be made up of this stuff, like matter and mind. Dual aspect monism is the view that the material and the physical are two aspects of, or perspectives of, the same substance. So the wide definition of monism is a philosophy is monistic if it postulates unity of the origin of all things. All existing things return to a source that is distinct from them. The restricted definition, this requires not only unity of origin, but also unity of substance and essence. Although the term monism is derived from Western philosophy to typify positions in the mind-body problem, it has also been used to typify religious traditions. In modern Hinduism, the term absolute monism is used for Advaita Vedanta. Monism was introduced in the 18th century by Christian van Wolff in his work Logic to designate types of philosophical thought, in which the attempt was made to eliminate the dichotomy of body and mind and explain all phenomenon by unifying one unifying principle or a manifestation of a single substance. The mind-body problem in philosophy examines the relationship between mind and matter, and in particular the relationship between consciousness and brain. The problem was addressed by René Descartes, resulting in Cartesian dualism, and by pre-Aristotelian philosophers, Avancenian philosophy in the earlier Asian and more specifically Indian traditions. It was later applied to the theory of absolute identity set forth by Hegel and Schelling. Thereafter, the term was more broadly used for any theory postulating a unifying principle. The opponent thesis of dualism was also broadened to include pluralism. According to Urmson, as the result of this extended use, the term systematically ambiguous. According to Jonathan Schaeffer, monism lost popularity due to the emergence of analytical philosophy in the early 20th century, which revolted against the neo-Hegelians. Carnap and Ayer, who were strong proponents of positivism, ridiculed the whole question as incoherent mysticism. The mind-body problem has reemerged in social psychology and related fields with interest in mind-body interaction, and the rejection of Cartesian mind-body dualism in the identity thesis, a modern form of monism. Monism is also still relevant in the philosophy of mind, where various positions are defended, and this Ben Watkins mentioned in my debate. And there you have a nice little diagram. So I mentioned these before: substance monism, attributive monism, the view that whatever the number of substances, there's a single ultimate kind. Partial monism, within a given realm of being, there is only one substance. Genus monism, the doctrine that there is the highest category. And so you have pre-Socratic monist, post-Socratic, and then you have here your pantheism is a belief that everything composes an all-encompassing immanent God, or that the universe is identical with divinity. Pantheists thus do not believe in a personal or anthropomorphic God, but believe that interpretations of the term differ. Pantheism was popularized in the modern era as both a theology and philosophy based on the work of Spinoza, whose ethics was an answer to Descartes' famous dualist theory that the body and spirit are separate. Spinoza held that the two are the same, and monism is a fundamental quality of his philosophy. He was described as a God-intoxicated man and used the word God to describe the unity of all substance. Although the term pantheism was not coined until after his death, Spinoza was regarded as its most celebrated advocate. Pantheism is closely related to monism, as pantheists too believed all of reality is one substance called universe, God, and nature. Pantheism is a slightly different concept, however, is
Is
dualistic.
there any way to stop that dinging? It's kind of driving me nuts.
It's my phone in the back. I'll have to check it. So after I've finished reading this, I'll stop it. Panentheism is a belief system that posits that all divine interpenetrate every part of nature, but is not one with nature. Pandeism or pan is a term describing beliefs coherently incorporating or mixing logically reconcilable elements of pantheism and classical deism is therefore most particularly the belief that the creator of the universe actually became the universe, so it ceased to exist as a separate unity. So you have Asian, Indian religions. The central problem in Asian philosophy is not the mind-body problem, but the search for an unchanging real or absolute being, absolute beyond the world of appearances and changing phenomenon, the search for liberation and the liberation from the cycle of rebirth. In Hinduism, substance ontology prevails, seeing Brahman as the unchanging real beyond the world of appearances. In Buddhism, process ontology is prevalent, seeing reality as empty of an unchanging essence. Vedanta is the inquiry into the systemization of the Vedas and Upanishads to harmonize the various and contrasting ideas that can be found in these texts. Within Vedanta, there's different schools: Advaita Vedanta, absolute monism, of which Adi Shankaracharya is the best known representative, Vishish Advaita, qualified monism.
Vishistadvaita. It means
Brahman.
qualified non-dualism.
Well, here they have written qualified monism, which is Ramanuja.
That's the same thing. Non-dualism and monism is the same thing.
Shuddhavaita, in essence monism. Dvitavaita, differentiated monism of Nimbarka. Dvaita, dualism, a school founded by Madhvacharya, probably the only Vedantic system that is opposed to all types of monism. It believes that God is eternally different from souls and matter in both form and essence. Chintya Beta Veda, school of Vedanta founded by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, representing the philosophy of inconceivable oneness and difference. It can be understood as an integration of the strict dualist theology of Madhvacharya and qualified monism of Ramanuja. Advaita, Vedanta. Monism is most clearly identified in Advaita Vedanta. In Advaita Vedanta, Brahma is eternal, unchanging, infinite, immanent, and transcendent reality in which the divine ground of all matter, energy, time, space, being, and everything beyond the universe. The nature of Brahma is described as transpersonal, personal, and impersonal by different philosophical schools. Advaita Vedanta gives an elaborate path to attain moksha. It entails more than self-inquiry or bare insight into one's real nature. Practice, especially jnana yoga, is needed to destroy one's tendencies before real insight could become attained. Advaita took over from the Madhyamika, the idea of levels of reality. Usually 2 levels are being mentioned, but Shankara uses sublation as the criteria to postulate the ontological hierarchy of 3 levels. Paramathika, absolute, the absolute level, which is absolutely real and into which both other reality levels can be resolved. This experience can't be sublated by any other experience. Vivarika or Samvrita Saya, empirical or pragmatical, our world of experience, the phenomenon world that we handle every day when we are awake, is the level of both the jiva, living creatures, or individual souls, and Ishvara are true here. The material world is also true. In Pratyabhashika, reality based on imagination alone, it is the level in which appearances are actually false, like the illusion of snake and rope. Vaishnava, all Vaishnava schools are panentheistic and view the universe as part of Krishna or Nayana, but see a plurality of souls and substances within Brahma, monistic theism, which includes the concept of personal God as a universal, omnipotent, supreme being who is both immanent and transcendent, is prevalent with many other schools of Hinduism. It goes on. I'm not going to read the Buddhism or Sikhism or the rest, but just thought a
That's
nice
an awesome
review.
article. Thank you so much for that. That is an amazing collection of what are sure to be highly important
Okay,
facts
so
in your
take
future. So thanks for that. All right, did you say you want to take a break?
Yeah, let me check my phone messages, but I'm listening.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. Wow, that's like right up my alley. Absolutely love this stuff. Krabby! You did me proud, Krabby. You actually talked about stuff on your stream. I was watching, I was like, this is so true. I love it. And I love that you get the whole measurement device thing. It's like, yes. Does that make us robots? Does it matter? I don't care. Go ahead and welcome to the show.
It does. No, we are not robots. Robots don't have a soul. I enjoyed that article very much, and I'm still reading it actually. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I won't be able to do these for a little while, so I'm gonna try to make this one good. I'm just going somewhere with no Wi-Fi, so I'll be able to upload videos, but doing like a full thing is gonna be kind of difficult, kind of sticky.
Is this farming related? You don't have to tell us if you don't want to. I mean, you're totally entitled to your privacy. I was curious because it's always nice to take, breaks from stuff to go. Is it like an intentional getting away from society type thing, or just a temporary
No,
thing?
I'm just moving, and this is the temporary place. And it is a farm though, so you're kind of right.
Congratulations. Well, I do love those videos that you make. It's like, wow, would not have the patience to do that. I had the patience to record 10 seconds of a sunrise. I was like patting myself on the back, like, yeah, 10 seconds. That's pretty good.
Well, you can set it, make noodles, come back. I don't know. It's not.
Well, it seems like you got the whole thing like set up. You seem to it works for you. Like it's part of the whole charm of them. Anybody who hasn't checked out Wonder Crab's videos, should check out, especially the last one, because it's you're speaking more from the heart. And can you notice a difference in how much easier it is to speak from the heart versus when you're stuck too much in your head, and you can kind of start to see it in other people when they're rationalizing too much. And it's like, well, you didn't relay that off your heart at all. But it's like, how do you say that to somebody who's not? Anyway, that's a whole other subject, but yeah.
On this article of monism, I've never really heard a refutation of monism, and I'm not super familiar with the alternative models, but they seem like they have. I mean, I don't understand how you unify that metaphysically.
Well, when you say monism, what are you referencing? Because the thing is that Christianity, Platonism, and the Orphic hymns, potentially written by Pythagoras, but that's another story. They've sort of morphed our conceptual understanding of these terms on the cultural level. So when you say monism, are you saying like Advaita? Are you saying non-dualism? Are you saying that everything fundamentally is the same?
Yeah, in the article it's priority monism, but I don't understand the alternative to that.
Dualism, are you familiar with? Well, that's there is an argument perhaps to be made that anything other than Advaita is not coherent. Sorry, anything other than non-dualism is incoherent. That's possible. I was actually just thinking about how I might attempt to put forward some type of demonstration of that. And I'm going to try to find my picture. I don't remember if I loaded it up or not. Okay, I've got standing wave, so I can throw that there for now. Did you see the picture that I made of the photonic and massive? And It's like yellowy orange. God, I love it. I was looking at it for like 10 minutes last night. Anyway,
Shouldn't it be flipped?
why would it be flipped?
Isn't the photonic much more significant and hidden than the massive, than the numinal, or not the numinal, the Cartesian?
Well, there is no Cartesian in this. Cartesian is something that has been disproven, so you can't use. Well, I won't use Cartesianism because I've disproven it. I'm not going to use something I know isn't right. It doesn't ultimately matter at the end of the day because it works, but that's Platonism for you.
Anyway, is there like somebody who would posit a legitimate dualist metaphysics, or like
imagine just saying like Purusha Prakriti, that's the fundamental cosmological principle, or yin and yang is the fundamental cosmological principle, and that's the fundamental. So you got dualism. I mean, there are schools that have said things like this, but it may not be metaphysically consistent because when you impose a polarity or a duality as the fundamental, your mind kind of generates a unified understanding of that through the mere instantiation of the duality, right? Like when you think of the yin yang, you're not thinking of the fact that it's divided in two, you're thinking of the fact that it's a circle with two subparts. So if you can't conceive of something that isn't non-dualism, even if we tell ourselves it's non-dualism, can that really be the case? Like, are these approaches really actually coherent at the end of the day? Still try to find it's a really good diagram. Here we go. Yay. Put that in here. This really covers it. So are you familiar with this kind of diagram that's coming up just on the screen right now? It's harmonic resonance. It's basically like with an instrument. That's an example of a standing wave. So if we wanted to understand like how the different vibrational nodes of modes, with an M, of the sphere, then you'd think of it like a flat surface, this rigid, semi-rigid body here of a disc vibrating, but this would have to be somehow turned into a three-dimensional surface. So it's a two-dimensional or sort of two-dimensional. Anyway, let's worry about this simpler diagram here first. So this sort of reminds me of music, like you can have the same string on a guitar and different sounds. It's not quite the same because the reason that sounds are different on a guitar is because you're shortening the length of the fundamental frequency. Whereas what's happening in nature is that the length can't change, but so in nature, like if nature's a guitar, and you know how you can change a guitar to like make the effective length of the string shorter. Is that correct? Just you make it more tight, right? I really suck at music, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Yeah, higher frequency, higher pitch.
So that would be actually changing the length of the overall oscillator in this diagram, but nature can't change the length of the oscillator. So its harmonic resonance is always derivative of its original geometric size. And so this is the idea of like the one versus the many, that the many emanate from the one as harmonics of the one. So the many don't make sense without the one is the argument basically. So yeah, there may be some way to construct some type of proof, quote unquote, it's not really proof, but opinion piece, that nothing other than Advaita or monism or non-dualism or however you want to phrase it makes any sense.
And that seems to be the consensus. That seems to be not that lends any legitimacy, but that seems to be the consensus among scientists, especially.
Most people today don't even believe in Platonism. I think if pressed, the average scientist would not be able to deny the axioms of Platonism, because really science can't deny Platonism because Euclideanism needs Platonism. I don't think scientists would deny it on that basis, but if you just ask them if they endorse Platonism as a worldview, I don't think they'd know what to say.
Or if yeah, but they intuitively move towards things like a grand unified theory, because they understand that at some level these things, the field of biology and they all have to be unified. They all have to become understood by the dominant field. And right now that would be like particle physics. But
people just
they
all want to be
do-
Advaita Vedantins, right? Everyone's
They
just
do.
going from place to
Yeah.
place until they finally find their temple where they can go study Advaita.
Well,
I can relate, man.
We want. I mean, I don't. It's intuitive, and I just don't. I've never even heard anybody try to refute it. I'd love for somebody to try someday.
Well, you
But
can't
I don't
because
even know where to look.
it's the ground of proof. You can't disprove the ground of proof. It's as absurd of a notion as trying to drive the engine of a car. It's like you can't drive the engine of a car. The engine is part of what allows you to drive a car. So does it it's a backwards phrased question, like there's a direction of metaphysics, a necessary direction of metaphysics. Not all questions are well defined. So to say something like prove God, you can't prove the impersonal God because God is the ground of proof and everything else, right? So that's definitional. So the fact that people don't understand this argument is quite unsettling to me because it's like you're arguing assuming Platonism is fallacious. So you're basically assuming everything everyone came up with back then was wrong, even though, like, look at all the crazy cool buildings they had, but they were wrong. And we're right now. And I'm expected to believe that. So yeah, anyway, mental illness speaks. And yeah, most people have no clue about any of this stuff, and it's a real shame because everything is just framed in, I guess you could call it like Hegelian Socratic dialogues.
But isn't it interesting how people who have who don't know about like the ether, for instance, they will recreate the ether over time if they are given the opportunity.
Yeah, that's why we have like a really rare opportunity right now to actually get models of what you might call necessary natural metaphysics, because it's like answering that question that you're sort of teasing out right now. It's like what do we need to believe before we can even start knowing anything? So yeah, definitely I would agree that this non-dualism is super important, and whoever formats your non-dualism, aka the person that gives you your ground of comprehension, you better darn well trust them and acknowledge that this is a big thing because it's shaping your core perceptions. So think about it before you commit to somebody else's worldview as regards what's a fundamental dualism and non-dualism in the universe. It just
I think when people are confronted by this, it deeply emotionally affects them, especially epistemology. There's a guy, Darth Dawkins, who's a Christian, but he's probably one of the most hated online personalities that regularly, I mean, he doesn't even upload. People are so viciously attached to him that they will go into his server and do high quality production. Like they will take clips and they will take video and they'll set the whole thing up just so they can create like channels dedicated to hating this fella. And I think it's because
so that's
he's
Hegelianism.
raising.
That's Hegelianism. It's like obsession with a person who believes something you should be ignoring. That's the cornerstone of Hegelianism. It's like they need each other. The Christians need the skeptics because literally nobody else would think that those arguments were compelling because they're essentially making two sides of the same argument. And it's like, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But let's not kid ourselves that this is an actual debate about who has the best idea. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, somebody like him is like, I wouldn't even want to talk to somebody like that, frankly. Because I'm playing on his terms to figure out some way for him not to hang up on me. It's like, do I give a shit? Fuck you, basically, and I just leave immediately. So I definitely had a terrible experience on a T-Jump server with both him and that drunken imbecile Nephilim. I hate even saying the name. Just don't even want to give any attention to these idiots at all. But yeah, I mean, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. These people are just spin doctors. And maybe everybody's a spin doctor, but these people are not really representing how they actually see things. They're just reciting something they think that they've memorized, which is true. Like T-Jump, it is objective morality. The system has convinced absolutely zero people, probably not even T-Jump, that it actually says anything. I don't think Darth Dawkins is the most hated guy on the internet, by the way. From what I've seen, people seem to like him quite a bit. So, in fact, they seem to need him. Odd person to need. So it's like you got to sort of see past what people say. It's a great opportunity to learn. Like when people are always talking about how much they quote hate something, it's like they don't really hate it. They actually kind of like it, but want to tell themselves that they hate it, but they want to focus on it. So it's not like words like love and hate are less informative than what people choose to focus their energies on. And there's so many just layers and layers and layers of meaning. On Doovid, I did just what you said, where I was just like describing exactly what T-Jump did when he was like refused to engage with my arguments, and he said I was wrong, and I just like I got into the pundit chair, and I just said, well, this is what he did, and this and this and this, and I didn't even talk to him, because it's like, if you're not even going to engage with what I'm saying on any level, go to hell. Go to hell. I am not going to explain why your dumb interpretation and negation and rejection of what I said is wrong, because that would presuppose that you were actually going to be capable of accepting what I said. But the Socratic method doesn't actually give you a point at which you stop Socratically interrogating. You just think, oh, it's something, it's like something in the future, like a free market or a free will. Oh, the answer to the Socratic method, the end of the Socratic method, when it can stop hurting. When will the pain be over? When will the torture be over? Well, the answer is never. It's just going to keep on drilling.
The power asymmetry is still there.
Forever.
He's never asked you to speak to you. He's never asked to come on Week in Review. He's never asked to, go on your channel and you keep on.
I highly doubt he even knows this channel exists.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm saying, like, it's just the fact that you're coming to him, meaning he's already won.
Sure. Go T-Jump!
Or just demonstrates the power asymmetry, which is probably what the main thing he's trying to demonstrate. He was saying that...
or just didn't even
like
cross his mind.
People like you are lining... Well, I mean, he doesn't have to cross his mind, because people like you are still lining up for him.
Absolutely.
This might not be the right crowd for it, but there is a big hyped up fight that is supposed to take place tonight, I think. And I think it really demonstrates the principle. Like, there is the professional, well, not like, there is the
Jake Paul fight or something.
That's right. So you have the new fighter, Jake Paul, who's coming in and asking to fight with Tyron Woodley, right? And there's a power dynamic there. People know Tyron Woodley is a more experienced fighter, certainly has some advantages on his side. But you have this new challenger that comes in. You have, what's his name? Jake Paul, and he comes in and he makes a big show, and he doesn't have to put in the effort of like defending a title for all these years and gaining skill and all this. He comes in and does like a whirlwind tour. I'm going to fight this guy, this guy, this guy, and then this guy, and I'm just going to make my thing and get out of here and remain an internet person. I mean, I'm not to speculate his plans, but it's like, to a degree, it's almost not worth going on modern day debate and becoming a.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. Da, da, da. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, right. I shouldn't speak too fast, but I love the people over at Modern Day Debate. James is a wonderful fella, and it's all good vibes. But it's like, to some degree, you can just come in there, and if you win at the end, the power dynamic shifts, I believe, without as much effort having to be put in as Tyron Woodley or T-Jump, the title defender. Although I guess it's like, to say win is a little bit different here, because we're talking about debate and like not a fight where the winner is actually decided.
Not really. I mean, if you look at like chess, which is much more clear, and you just mentioned what an unfriendly game it is, but if you have a chess club and you have your your local chess champion, your club champion, and someone comes in and destroys everybody in the chess club, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And Arville was, if you wanted to talk about the meaning of friendship, was even mentioning like the olden days where chess clubs probably don't even exist that much anymore, especially COVID-19 have been decreasing in online. But like no, you come in and you beat the local club champion, you're not necessarily going to become the most popular person in the club. They're not necessarily going to make you club president. It's not like necessarily you're going to be able to open up your own club and tell everybody to leave the former club and join your club because you beat the best player in the club, and in any form of competition, because there's more social dynamics of at play that determine why people congregate with who they congregate with. And so, in theory, let's say like modern day debate, if you come in and you crush all of their debaters, and it's not like you say, okay, James, just turn the channel over to me. I came in, I defeated you, I defeated all your debaters, so now you should just turn the channel over to me. Or like there's no way that's going to happen. And if you, if you put it like
in a sense though,
come to my stream, you're saying like like that you're gonna go to T-Jump, you're gonna defeat him on his own server, and you're gonna talk to his people. It's like, look how I destroyed your guy. Now all of you should just leave this pathetic excuse.
I never said that.
Following and follow me. And,
never said that.
So like,
I don't want those people for followers, FYI, or any followers in general. All I give a shit about is my ideas going viral. So just saying.
Yeah, but so if you have the institute, like if you have your local chess club, and the good chess players are coming to play in your club, that makes your club look better. And like if they're your guys, and saying, okay, just because like this better chess player came in and beat me in my own club, doesn't mean that like my followers are all of a sudden going to become this better player's followers. And so T-Jump, he's got his own place, he's got his own Discord, and so like Jennifer's the entertainment, and bring her in there to entertain his guys, and she could think what she wants. If some of his followers want to follow her content also, it probably doesn't make any big deal to him. And there's just the nature.
Well, he was saying that people sounded like me, so I wasn't really listening, but he did say that.
It's the nature of entertainment. Say, okay, like chess is an unfriendly game. I mean, boxing is even more unfriendly, but still they follow certain.
Otto said, if everybody hates each other, can't we just be at least cordial? And I'm like, that seems reasonable enough.
Well, I mean, so you sell tickets,
but even if that's the case.
So if you're running a chess, you sell tickets. So I mean, it's a chess club and everyone hates each other, as long as they're all paying members to hate each other. Or if it's a fight club or a tournament, you're making the tournament and everyone wants to show that they're the best, and they all hate each other. It doesn't matter if you're running the tournament; they could all hate each other as long as they enter the tournament and pay the fee. And whatever your model for building up your institute, if it's debate or boxing, you could use people's negative character against them for your own advantage. And that's really kind of the system of the West and capitalism and entertainment in general, like the political system, and like, oh, now you're going to run for president. You're the big thing. You're going to try to be in leadership. Or if it's news, and it's like Luke Ford, just like whatever you want to say, just come to my channel and say it on my channel. Like Charles Moskowitz, like, I'm trying to grow my channel, making money off of advertisement, this and that, or the model. Like if Jennifer in her own mind wants, like, I'm the best debater, and it's kind of like chess players, like, I'm the best.
In my own mind,
people just need to recognize that I'm the best, and then everything will be fine.
Don't give a shit.
Recognize that I'm the best, and like the reality is like almost nobody besides the top players, and even the top players don't even care who's the best. So like the new guy coming in is like, I'm the best. I beat everybody. And it's still like no one even asked their name. No one wants to be their friend because they're the only one that care that they're the best.
What's the point of this rant? What's the point of this rant?
And I mean,
I had no like. It's you're kind of mischaracterizing what my intentions were there.
Well, I'm putting you kind of like these chess players. You're just like, well, your intention was to show that you're the best. You're just
No,
gonna beat
my
everybody.
intention
You're gonna
was to
come in,
say, look
and
at
then you're all
how
going to recognize that I'm the
cruel.
best. And
Look
then
at how
everyone-
absolutely disgustingly, condescendingly cruel these slugs are. And people like this hate people who love knowledge and want to destroy it, and people who hate God are
So
dangerous.
it's just
That's my point. So
yeah. I mean,
I
it's
think I
just
made my point.
an increase of bad karma.
I
Say I'm
definitely.
the best.
Well,
and the
actually,
reason why I'm
overall,
better than
it
you
decreased
is
the
because
bad
you all
karma.
have bad karma. You're that dumb, and you see the world in that pathetic of the way, and that's why I'm the best. And I just come in and crushed all of you.
Big difference between being modest and polite when you get absolutely crushed and admitting it, than turning into a child and being like, "You're bitch," and then having to be forcing somebody to tuple down in the name of principle. It's like you claim to have a principle. It's like Kurt Doolittle claims to have a principle. Would I give a shit what he was saying if he didn't? But he does, right? He's the one making the claim. Don't claim to be debating about the truth and ideas if you aren't. And maybe because if you do that, people might take issue with it.
That's why you have to have a more
Other
accurate
people
view.
get to look and see the absolute horrifically bad treatment that I have been
You have a more
uniquely
accurate view
subjected
towards
to.
reality. So I mean, that's you think, okay, I beat everybody, I'm the best, and now what?
It's not about
So
that. It's
like
about how
now
people
everyone
treated
hates you
me.
and wants to kill you. So like,
I
oh, good
don't
for
think
you.
that's the
You
case
got
at
everyone to
all.
hate you and want to kill you. Great, good.
No,
good
I
job.
think most people don't hate me, but there are some people who have hated me so much that they've basically silenced me. So I would have loved to have an opportunity to contribute positively to that thing, whatever. But I'm not going to do that if there's an alliance of, what is it, the Jonathan Swift imbecile alliance against the genius thing? Like, it's like, if you can't control that, I don't want to have anything to do with what you're doing, because that's the bad guys, That's the power that I have is I'll show you who the bad guys are. They're the ones who hate me. The more they hate me, the worse of a person they are. Just trust me. They're not
When you
people
ascribe
you
a
can
good
trust.
or bad to it, that is saying if there's any connection between being right or wrong. Or
Think of it from a
smarter
logical
or
perspective.
dumber.
Try to depersonalize it for just a second. What am I doing? Depersonalize it for a second. What is the facts of what's happening here? There is no response to what I'm doing, anything other than the less acceptable amount of respect you could show me would be just not saying anything. There's absolutely no reason to speak against what I do or say, and that's
Of course
the
there
right
is.
at a point.
I mean, that's why you have
that-
just the distance of the reality.
Okay, exactly. Yeah. Well, sure.
The struggle of power
somebody
that it doesn't matter. There's a natural assertiveness of a person, and people want to be above, not below. If you put yourself above, it causes people to dislike you. I mean, it says in just Jewish law that you should be careful about publicly complimenting people because it makes people feel bad when other people are being praised, not them.
I'll never be jealous of anyone's greatness. I promise that.
Well, I mean, saying
I'll
human
never
nature
railroad
is human
anyone
nature.
who's better than me. I'll be happy about it.
Well, I'm saying that human nature is human nature, and that's what talk about violence or something. Like violence is the natural order of man. Hatred is the natural order of man. Jealousy, these are all the default position of the material realm, and so you have to have your value proposition, and then if you're coming in just to demonstrate that I'm right, what's the value to the people in being demonstrated that? And usually there's no value, and so it just creates negative karma. And if you're talking like power is largely
Well, that's what they're billing it as.
So that's why I say like power.
So you don't think it's bad karma that people are confused into thinking that this is a debate when it's not a debate? That's bad karma to lie to people about what's the content of the show, isn't it? It's like bait and switch.
So, just like words, people use words. They use the word debate, but if you have a power dynamic, if Jennifer's saying she doesn't have power, she's upset that she doesn't have power, and she wants to acquire power, and then you have to go about
complete mischaracterization of how I feel. But please go on.
Then you have to come up with a method for how you're going to acquire power, but the acquisition of power.
Again, complete misframing. I would never describe how I see things that way, but again, you're entitled to your opinion, I guess. I don't know how informative it is. It's supposed to be about ideas, and whenever you bring it back to me as a person, it's like, stop.
Because the ideas come from a person.
Yeah,
I'm not
you
sure.
have to depersonalize to be a philosopher.
I'm not sure chess is directly comparable to something like boxing or debate, where really it's like only
Chess is
one
much more
can
decisive
be.
than other of them. And so even boxing, where you might have a knockout, but I'm saying, or debate, chess is certainly much more decisive and clear who the winner and the loser is than boxing. But even in chess, where it's decisive, like this person clearly won, this person clearly beat you again and again and again, still the human ego power dynamics are at play, where even something decisive, where you have such a clear showing to everybody who the winner and the loser is, that the power dynamics don't match necessarily, that the person who won gains power or anything like that.
I wouldn't expect the channel to be handed over to Jennifer, but what I would say is that what you gain.
Could you imagine if that's the world we lived in?
Right.
You won.
Well,
Thanks, PewDiePie. Sorry.
What I do imagine, though, is that if you display, I was going to say competitive efficiency, but if you display an advanced explanatory power, or you trigger T-Jump emotionally into having some kind of conniption, if you do something that
publicly destroys him as a person in front of everybody.
Right.
The point of Grundle's Live is for that to be the last time.
What you could get is re-invited, and I think when you do something like this, especially on a channel in front of that many people, when the next atheist king debate god, when the next Tyron Woodley comes along, right? Who do they look to? They look to the only people in the past who have displayed competitive efficiency over these people because it's entertaining, or whatever reason they watch debates, right?
The value proposition. Just come down to the value proposition.
Oh yeah, sure.
So it's like Ben Watkins, who was flown in, and maybe he was paid, or but was a guest of honor in in real life public debate for a Christian organization, to be the atheist to debate, and saying they chose Ben Watkins, not T-Jump.
Well, I'm not saying T-Jump is king.
Didn't good old Ben concede our point? Didn't good old Ben concede panpsychism? Good old Benji. So. Well, he seemed somewhat mollified at the end of that convo on Theology Unleashed, from what I recall. I remember thinking, wow, that was pretty humble of him. I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, he displayed good character,
don't remember it the same way.
Professionalism. I mean, he could have just said something like, a lot of time, like, because he's a professional.
I guess I'm an idiot for taking people at their word, eh? Thank God you're around to help me be more cynical. I don't, and I'm not being sarcastic at all.
Well, meaning, say like, say in America that, like, I'm a good American, the capitalistic system, I could say, thank you, have a good day, and really be thinking, I hate you, I hope you die, because it's America. And when you do business with somebody, when you that it doesn't matter. Sad. You say, God bless, have a good day, even if in your heart you're saying, I hate you, I hope you die. And so you're like, no, I'm saying if he's a professional, even in his heart, if he's saying, I hate you, I hope you die, that he's a professional, he's going, oh, it was nice meeting you, and he was very interesting, so I'll look into some of those ideas. But like, no, me and Ben are friends on Facebook, and hopefully we do have a relationship moving forward. And that was kind of Arvel talking about friendship, and I largely completely disagreed with him. The word friendship is even unclear if it means anything. If you're just talking about mutually beneficial relationships and calling that friendship, or you want to put friendship to the level where it's friendship where it's not mutually beneficial, it's friendship where it's detrimentary to the person and they continue it, that's why it's friendship. and you're saying like, no, this guy's my friend because when all logic dictated he should have turned against me and dumped me, he stuck with me, and that's why he's my friend, as opposed to just a mutual beneficial relationship. And then you could have mutually beneficial relationship with people you don't like. That's why I was telling Luke Ford, he still got that video up, pinned on his Twitter, that you do business not with people you like, you do business that you have a good track record with. And saying, I would rather do business with people I hate that make good deals, that do what they say, come on time, take things seriously, than someone I like who works for unprofitable deals because it's mutually beneficial. And then like Kabbalistically, they say it's a soul type thing. You don't get to choose who you like or you don't. If two people appear before you and you have a natural affinity to like one person and dislike the other, that's beyond a person's free will. And it's like friendship, you just people that enjoy,
unless you live by
experience.
principles.
Well, I mean,
But you're always going to have aesthetic preferences, right?
I mean, for the sake of intellectual argument, let's say I despise Jennifer and everything about her, but we have a good working relationship and produce a good show, and intellectually, and there's mutual benefit to both of us. Therefore, I continue with Week in Review, even though my heart, like, I don't like her. There's nothing about her I like, and if I thought about it, everything about her I dislike.
Well, you wouldn't be the first one, so.
Well, I'm saying that I would still work together with you because the value proposition is there, and it doesn't matter that I don't like you because we put together a good show and there's a value proposition. In versus, say, like, let's say I like Jennifer and like, oh, she's really great. I love, just the concept of her is awesome. But we put together a crappy show and there's no value proposition. So it's saying that you're better, like Brundle. I didn't really like the guy, honestly, but I streamed with him for a while. We made good shows. We made good content. But like, no. Like,
his voice was really annoying and nasal sometimes.
I don't really like anybody. Honestly, I don't really like anybody. Like, I have a pretty negative view towards humans, and basically I dislike everybody, including myself. But in terms of working together with people, I put zero.
That's what I kind of like about you.
I put zero basis whether I like the person or not. Like, I just examine in my own mind. If my mind tells me I like this person, I dislike this person, I will pay attention to my mind. Just like if you see, multiple women and this woman sexually attracts me, this one doesn't, and I could pay attention to my mind. It was like T-Jump saying, well, like, I'm not sure why, but he's attracted by hot blondes, and other women he's not attracted to, and he could just examine his own mind and say, I don't know why this is about me, but it's something I've noticed about myself. But then I keep on saying that the eye see, the heart desires, the mind plots, and the limb carries out. So when the mind starts to plot, that you have some sort of executive control, and I can say, well, my heart desires this, but the Bible says don't go after the eyes, don't go after the heart. So when my eyes and heart tell me something, it doesn't matter because I don't do what my eyes and heart tell me anyways. And I don't know how you put that into a friendship. You were saying like friendship, obviously.
Well, that's why I wanted to watch that Arval video, and I'm so glad that you did, because people misunderstand friendship, especially when you're looking at it from the zero-sum game. Like, well, it's a mutually beneficial using, and the minute it's not advantageous, I'm fucking gone. I'm just moving on to the next thing. It's like, that's not the kind of person you want to enter into that.
It's usually the opposite, like I said.
Resonance
like
with
friendship
the
isn't
monadic principle of friendship, a la the way Arval. That's why I wanted to see that video. It's kind of cool how he talked about it.
You mean friendship usually implies the opposite of the value proposition, that I'm friends with the person because the value proposition isn't there. And that's why I mentioned, the Gandalf and Brundle and Luke agreed with me that by yourself.
The value proposition is the friendship, and it's what holds you over during the tough times. If, let's say, you have a mini fight or something.
Well, mean to say that you don't necessarily know who's going to be there for you in your time of need. And if you're, thank God, if you're never in a time of need, that you might not, really know who's going to be there for you. If you're in a bad situation, And it could turn out that in your time of need, a person who doesn't really like you, like I'm a pretty nice guy. If someone comes up and asks me for help, even if I don't like them, I will probably help them. I'm not going to base my decision of whether or not I'm going to help them on whether I like them or not. And then you could say friendship. I owe you. I'm friends with you. In Hebrew, there's a word chorus. It's actually a mitzvah commandment called hakoros atov, which is recognizing the good, and that means that you have to recognize or repay the good that people have paid you. And some biblical commentators say that that's permanent, meaning to say that you never pay back. So, like if Jennifer does me a favor and I do a favor back, it's not that we're even, that the debt is continually owed. So, like me and Krabby are buddies, and I buy him lunch, and then he buys me lunch. And then, after 2 years, I bought him lunch 100 times, and he bought me lunch 100 times. It doesn't mean we're even. It means that he owes me recognition for the good for 100 lunches, and I owe him recognition of the good for 100 lunches.
Could you imagine tallying up a conversation and be like, you made 3 non sequiturs and 5 interruptions, so I'm deducting our friendship, 300 points. Okay, we're now 14 million points friends. Like, that's what it seems like it would be like to hang out with you, Doovid.
Brundle. When I day traded, there were a lot of people who had a lot of money, and I had a roommate at the time. He was making thousands of dollars a day, and he was chubby, and he didn't like to do anything. And sometimes he would ask for something, and sometimes it was just like taking out the garbage or cooking. But a lot of times it was like, can you, go to the store and pick up dinner or something. And a lot of times he would even pay. And then he bought things for everybody. Like I've done that also. But this guy, he had made much more money than me, and he treated everybody to drugs, to parties, to food countless times. And then occasionally he would want something from you and you wouldn't want to do it, and he would recount every single thing he ever did for you. And he would be like, that time I bought you dinner, that time I gave you $20, that time I let you take my weed.
Anything. And that's why I don't like accepting charity from some people, because they will do stuff like that. And I don't even want to say who I'm thinking of right now, but I can definitely think of a couple people.
I know a lot of people, like, it was pretty common among Jews who give a lot of charity. And this guy was quite wealthy, and he really did do quite a few things for people. So like he could even say like, dude, I've spent hundreds, thousands of dollars on you. Like let me count the $1,000+ that I've spent hooking you up and shame you into doing what I want.
It's really unhealthy for a friendship. It's an unhealthy thing for a friendship to do.
It's like, friendship. He just wanted that thing done, and saying he wasn't really friends. I'm saying he was just rich, and like he would treat, and maybe he didn't even like me, so he was just buying for everybody, or he bought a bunch of weed and he was rolling a bunch of joints, and he hated me. He didn't even like me, but I was there, so he let me get high with everybody else.
He just liked having asses in the seats to convince himself that he was a cool dude surrounded by his bros at any time he wanted.
I don't know if you're projecting.
It seems like a weird existence.
Think like a poor woman. So if you just have a bunch of resources, you hook a bunch of people up. So if you're making large sums of money, and you're just like, it's on me. I'm treating everybody, even the people I hate. And
why would I be in a posse with people I hate?
Because you really don't have free will is limited, and you're constantly around people you don't like. So if you work in an office, and it's saying the value proposition, like, okay, I worked in an office, and of course half the people there I didn't like, but I wanted to get ahead, so I worked in an office with, even though half the people there I didn't like. Like I moved into a house.
I mean, isn't it weird to even have it in one way or the other on most people? Like, shouldn't you just be indifferent to most people? It's like, there's somebody in the office, I hate them. It's like, what?
Because you don't control. I mean, the Lubavitch Rebbe has writings on it. There's Kabbalistic writings that indicate you don't have control over who you like or hate. If you say it could even come from past lives or soul factors. But let's say we're streaming and there's Krabby and memes, and any one of these people, and I have an inclination, I kind of like this person, I kind of dislike this person, that's something outside of free will, and it's some sort of soul factor that I don't have control over. But you're saying if I'm a worked on person, I treat basically everybody equal, whether I like them or not. So if you're in the office and you made a bunch of money and you're going to buy lunch for everybody, you're not just going to buy lunch for the few people you like. And you could try that. You could try a few times. And it's actually quite difficult to just be nice to the people that you like. You're sort of saying, like, if you thought about it, if you're in that circumstance where you're in office and saying that things are usually evenly distributed. If your office and there's 40 people there, and there's going to be some sort of distribution, and let's say it's a normal curve of people who have a natural inclination to like and people who have a natural inclination to dislike. And you're saying, okay, like, you create some
Or
good
how about
karma,
if you
or you
think
want to
about
be
hating
nice,
somebody,
so
you
you're going to
think
buy
about
lunch
something
for
else
everybody.
instead.
It's very difficult to like put like names, like, oh, in the other room, like there's food for everybody for these people that I like, and you have the name of names on the wall of the people I like that get hooked up, and then you have someone at the door that's going to say these people I don't like, they don't get to come in. And to some extent it is like that. That's what club life is. In Manhattan you have bouncers and violence, and to say like you like pretty girls, come, women for free, dudes $20. Like a lot of clubs are like that. Women come in for free, men have to pay. But when you in Manhattan, you got to buy a bottle at a club and it costs a lot of money. So you go to a club in Manhattan, that you like, if it's a crowded club, and are you familiar with how this works?
Getting into a crowded club in Manhattan?
I'm saying in buying, usually there's a long line waiting outside, and you have to pay cover fee. Sometimes women get in for free, or if you're making a party, you have a certain amount of tabs, and the club has like a bar and a dance section, and they have tables. And in order to get a table, you have to buy a bottle, which means like a bottle of vodka. So if you go to the bar and you buy a drink, but you buy a bottle, and the club will charge a lot of money, charge like $300. So you get like a bottle of vodka, and they'll give you like a bottle of vodka and 2 pitchers of juice, like cranberry juice, orange juice, Coke, and so you can mix your bottle in drinks, and it's ridiculously expensive. So at a club in Manhattan, even a mediocre club, a bottle could cost a few $100s. At a very fancy club, it could cost like $1,000. So if you go to a fancy club that has famous people there, and big name stars, and you're waiting and waiting to get inside, and then you're pushed onto the crowded dance floor and the bar, and everything's crowded, and they have a little roped off section, with the VIPs, and they have to pay $1,000 for a bottle there. And then then you could you could be like, so if you're just some girl on the dance floor, and you want to sit down, and you say, oh, come sit, I got a table, sit by me. And then if your boyfriend comes to sit by me, you tell security, like, no, your boyfriend can't sit down. And then you can even have security bounce your boyfriend. You're saying, like,
Gotcha.
I'm gonna pay, like, security, can you beat
What's
up
the
her
point of
husband
this,
and bounce him
what's the
out for
point of
me?
this intimidating rant about a dance club? I would never get in that way, by the way. I've got a squad. If I want to get in somewhere, I have ways that don't involve that.
Well, you're a country girl with a high IQ. Saying like,
I
no, I'm
also
saying
know
that,
how to dance in a way that most people can't. And
well, you
I
could
have a
try,
friend
but
who's
by
a
saying like,
model. Multiple model friends. So anyway, I go about things a little different.
I'm saying there's a system, and it doesn't really work that well, because karma's
All right.
karma. But it's saying like, yes, if you were in Manhattan at a club, and you're saying, okay, like, I'm going to use my money and my connections to try to just go to the club and pick off the people I like, and avoid the people I don't like, and like, and you have a whole system of security and bouncers, and in these systems, and really the places are degenerate in the first place, that there isn't even is
So
such a
why
thing.
are we
But like,
talking about this if it's so degenerate? Like, what's the
because we're
point of
talking about the nature. Well, I was just mentioning the nature of friendship, and I mentioned the karma, that it doesn't really work that well, and saying that when the club life is largely a failure, and it's like, okay, like, I like Jennifer, so I'm going to invite her to the party, but like, oh, she's gonna bring her husband, and like, God forbid, I'm gonna have her husband beat up so that I could try to make the move on her. But like, she's not gonna like me if she knows I had her husband beat up, so I'm gonna have to go to some sort of extra measure so that she doesn't know that. And really, that's how club and degenerate party life works. And you get the guy, the girl always comes together with her boyfriend, and so the first thing you have to do is separate the girl from her boyfriend. There's methods and strategies for doing that. And
we do not endorse these techniques on this channel at all, just to be clear. Whoa, disavow, mate.
Well, I say just karma. Like, I'm sure no matter where you're at, that's how like if you're going to a bar or club, generally.
Just to be clear, that we're not endorsing Doooovid is just saying this is an inevitable thing that
well, it's human nature.
Incontrovertibly occurs.
I don't endorse bars and clubs. I'm not saying that all bars and clubs should be forcibly shut down. I was saying factually, most people who go to bars and clubs want to have sexual relations, and so if you're on the prowl,
God forbid,
you have it arranged in the way that makes it most likely that you're going to succeed in getting those sexual relations, and you know that most women come to bars with men. So the first thing you have, I mean, sometimes you have groups of girls, so you have to have a method of separating the women from the men that they came with, and so there's multiple methods to do that, and it's all bad karma. But I'm just making the point that you don't. It's basically impossible to just separate the people that you like from the people that you don't like, so that generally people just hook up everybody. If you're going to hook people up, you hook up everybody, including the people that you don't like. So I mean, if mention like an office isn't like a bar or club, and you could have like if you have your own little room, you could maybe order food and just have a few people come to the side office, but then everyone's eventually they're going to hear about it and say like, oh, how come I never get invited? Oh, because the guy doesn't like you, and so it's bad karma. So generally, when you treat people even the ones that you don't like. So I mean, in synagogue or temple, when you have a family event, in synagogue you make kiddush, and when you buy kiddush, that includes for the people you don't like, and it's supposed to be that way. And when the Hare Krishna temple, when someone something good happens and they sponsor food for everybody, including the people that they don't like, and it's part of the karmatic factor. So I mean, question, what does it mean a friendship then? If you're saying like, okay, I'm a use the word enlightened person, I treat everybody equally, and I don't treat people differently based on whether I like them or not. What does friendship mean? And then if it means like value
reciprocal like self-interest between two people. So like the basic thing people want is self-interest. And then the next thing they kind of crave is some version of morality, which is a shared self-interest, a shared meaning, a shared identity. So it's a way to fulfill moral needs. That friendship or fulfilling.
So if you're rich and your friend is poor, does it make sense that you always buy for your friend? It's not reciprocal.
Absolutely, as long as your friend reciprocates in a manner that you feel that it's. I don't like to say fair, but maybe the right word is appropriate. Because I don't want people feeling like they have to be fair with what I give them. It's like it's normal for me to give more than people can give back.
If you're making $100,000 a year and your friend is making $20,000 a year, and you get together every week and you're saying, I always buy lunch. My friend has never bought me lunch. And the years that I've been meeting with my friend, they've never once bought me lunch. I've always been the one who paid for lunch, but I don't look at it like they owe me anything. There's the nature of what I said earlier also, that
well, they should feel like they owe you something, but they shouldn't feel like they have to pay you back money because you have a surplus of money. They should give you something you don't have a surplus of. That's kind of the logic.
Owe you something is not a friendship.
Reciprocal self-interest.
Or I'm saying like a parent takes care of their child.
Well, then there's no fucking friends,
not
right?
Because they expect their child to pay them back something.
If friendship is getting on a cross and nailing yourself to the name of somebody else's happiness, well.
We're saying if you expect your friend to pay you back, if you expect it, that's why I'm saying that friendship you're saying is not reciprocal. That friendship has to be, that I'm trying to make the point that
Functioning friendships
friendship is not
are
reciprocal.
reciprocal in a way, in an uncool
relationships,
way.
functional relationships are reciprocal. Friendships are not reciprocal. And saying you could have a functional
I'm
relationship.
sorry,
with
but I
people you don't
disagree
like.
with you on that.
Let's just say, like, okay, like
The
let's
friend
say,
is its
let's say
own
theoretically, I don't really like Jennifer. Like I
Oh,
thought
here we
about it.
go again.
I looked at her
You're gonna start to make
personality.
me take it personally
Well,
here.
let me. Well, no, I'm making a point. Let's say I looked at it, and like her personality, how she sees the world, honestly disgusts me. Um, However, we have a reciprocal relationship, and therefore we have a successful relationship, and it doesn't matter that I don't like her. Versus, you could say that, let's say I
That's
like
the thing.
her,
That's why I
but
like
we
Doovid,
had
because most
we
people
had an atypical
can't get past
relationship.
that. Most people in my life cannot get past
Like Luke
disliking
Ford.
me.
Like I don't really like Luke Ford, say, but we have a good reciprocal relationship. I mean, Luke Ford bought me my microphone, my camera. We're streaming partners, but like honestly, I don't really like Luke Ford. I'm saying like I'm not
You
not his
see,
hater.
I guess I like everybody then.
Well, I like everybody also, but I'm saying like no, like um like if I were picking out who I would like, who I'd hang out with, like I wouldn't chose Luke Ford, Brundle, Charles Moskowitz, Jennifer, any of these people. Is saying we have professional or well working reciprocal relations, and I'm more a loner. I don't really like anybody. Like if you ask me, generally I would almost always prefer to be by myself than have
So it's who
company.
you dislike the least then, and then that's
Well,
who you like.
Well, no, you have a functioning value proposition, and then okay, friendship is I owe you. Like okay, Jennifer has done things. She puts the show together. She has helped me out. She has enlightened me to ideas that I owe her something, so to say, that I feel that I'm indebted to see to her success or something because she has done things for me.
Well, you never told me that you owed me anything, and there was never any intent. I never did what I did in thinking you owed me anything. So
Yeah, but it's saying you have a functioning view towards the world and karma. And so I would leave like,
yeah.
I don't know if I have any friends. I don't even know what the word friendship means. In the book, Calvus of Ovos, that I did on my show, one of the most meaningful books that I read before I went to Israel multiple times. The wise
Okay, a
man
friend
asked
is a person who, if
the wise
something
man
good
asked
happens
his
to them,
son,
you're
how many
really
friends does
happy
he
about
have?
it.
The wise man asked his son, how many friends does he have? And his son thought for a minute, and thought maybe a few hundred. And his father, the wise man, said, "That's funny. My whole life, I have 0 friends." And it's supposed to be a lesson. What does friendship mean? King Solomon, in Ecclesiastics, basically said, what is friendship? That has no friends. That your reality is that all of my relationships with people are generally negative. That on the whole totality, that every single relationship I've had with a person has put me further away from the goal and wisdom than has helped me. And that's that's straight Ecclesiastics. And so this I didn't really like Averill because he seemed to put it like in the value proposition. And I would say if there is such a thing of friendship, it usually has to mean that the value prop. It usually means that there's some sort of relationship that goes on despite there not being a value proposition. And then so to say,
The friendship is the
if you
value
do have a
proposition,
value,
Doovid.
but it's not, because you don't need a friendship to
You
have
do need
a
friends,
profitable
I'm afraid.
relationship.
Yeah. Hard to admit. Yeah, that is something we
You have
need a lot more than
relationships.
that.
You have successful relationships and dealings with people that are not dependent upon friendships. I don't need to be friends with people that have successful dealings and relations with them. That's the point I'm making. Like maybe me and Jennifer are friends, maybe we're not. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
We
Well,
we
let's
could
just
still
leave it
have
in
we
a
could still
quantum
have a
superposition
successful
where
we
maybe
could
we're
still have a
friends. That's fine.
successful we could still have a successful show and intellectual and relation in whatever way that there is a value proposition. So if me and Jennifer say that Jennifer's never wronged me, Jennifer said, "Do it." I've never wronged her. The value proposition has always been there. to the question. It's like, well, are we friends? And it will say,
Yes.
well, what does friends mean? Okay, we're friends on Facebook, but it's saying what's the meaning of even friends? What does it mean? It was saying,
A
okay,
friend is a person when something good happens to
would
them,
you take a
you're
bullet
really
for me?
happy. You're really happy when something good happens to your friend.
Take a bullet for me? Does she have to take a bullet for me to be my friend? And
The
then it's like,
minimum
well,
amount to be someone's friend, Doovid, is if something good happens to them, you're honestly happy as though it happened to you. Like my friends, something great happens to them, I'm honestly happy. Probably not as happy as them because it's actually happening to them, but I'm really sincerely happy. So that's how I know it's a friend. But that's
the word
not
nachas
a
in
close
Hebrew.
friend necessarily. That's not a best friend, and I think there's relationships obviously way deeper than what you could characterize as a friend.
You're an enlightened person. You feel that way about everybody, including your enemies. I mean, that's the Hebrew word nachas, which just means wind, but generally means like you have nachas from your children. You take pleasure in their pleasure. So like if Jennifer's doing well, it causes me pleasure that she's having pleasure, even if there's no direct benefit to me in her benefit. But it's saying I'm an enlightened being. I take pleasure in everybody doing well, not just the people I like. So I'm just saying,
well, the people that are my friends, I take more pleasure in them getting good stuff than randoms I've never met. Okay, how's that?
You're separating. You're not a guru. You're not a swami. Saying enlightenment means saying that
I can have
your
both
disciples
without any contradictions. Don't worry.
No, I don't play favorites. I see God everywhere. I see God in my enemies. I see God in the people I don't like. And no, Jennifer is not enlightened. She doesn't see God everywhere. She plays favorites. So it's like, no, I want to be enlightened, and that means I take pleasure in seeing anybody do well.
No, you're not understanding what it is. You're misunderstanding. There's an ego, which is what holds the knowledge, and then there's the knowledge itself. And the ego gives you your aesthetic preference. So you'll always have favorites, even when you're enlightened. To think you could have that type of non-dualism is like a sort of, I call it a Buddhistic fallacy, very loosely. Like,
we pay attention to the mind. I still have a mind, but it's
I
like,
can
no, like
be fair
means
between
someone who's in
students
control
without
of the senses. You still reside in
What?
the body. So just so say the eye see,
well,
the
yeah,
heart
I'm
desires,
incarnated at the moment.
but you still have the sins, the
Well,
the
I
general
don't see
sin
the
of
body as
flesh.
sinful, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, because you're not a swami.
Oh,
You play favorites.
It's good to have meritocratic. It's not playing favorites to have a meritocracy. And my own personal preferences.
Meritocracy means you feel just as happy when the people you don't like and your enemy do well as the people you like and your friends do well.
Fair. I'm very fair as regards me being happy about friends' successes doesn't mean I can't be a good judge of just arguments.
I mean, you pay attention
those are
to your
unpersonal.
mind and you say, oh, I'm happy when my friend does well, and I'm not happy when my enemy does well.
That's
you're
why
saying that I would be more
enlightened character building to have
if I was equally happy when my enemy did well as my friend
Then
does
it's
well,
just
but I
not
know
worth
my
anything.
mind
Some
and my
stuff's
body. I
only
know
worth
the
stuff
limitations
when
of
it
my
operates
body.
in a narrow band. Human experience is only defined in narrow bands. If you try to dilute it to a huge band and be like, I love everybody, it's like it becomes trivial, tautological, and grounding of metaphysical. It's like, I'm not going to lie about what it means to be human. We're contrast detectors. I challenge anyone to find an instance where my personal preferences about people dictated my fairness and judgments of their arguments, though, because I do not think you will find such an instance. So, but I appreciate you being such high standards and stuff. But to try to force yourself to feel the same about everybody, that's a form of grahas, right? And a party graha is what you do in yoga to not have attachments. So it's like an anti. It's like with atheism being a religion. It's like an anti-attachment is still an attachment of in some sense.
It's a form of renunciation. You're saying renounce yourself from friends. And saying like, no, the guru
well,
has no
you can renounce to the attachments to the, as Krishna said, the result. But to renounce friendship, it's a virtue. You can't renounce a virtue. So I just want to answer the question in the chat from Project
No,
Sigma.
Saying, like Prabhupada was a friend to all.
Yeah, well, people have different approaches. But
Doovid is
he
a
asked,
friend to all.
or she.
Even my enemies,
Okay.
Doovid is a friend to all.
Well, you can be a better friend to all if you actually have some friends that are people you actually care about special and that you share in their joys, because it's a character building exercise.
Well, I
So,
mean,
do
you
you
have
mean involved parties contribute to maximize outcomes? No, I am not a quote pragmatist. I am not a utilitarian, because those are hedonistic ideologies. Okay, pragmatism is not an ideology, it is an approach to ideology. It's how much of the principle are you willing to skirt in the interest of getting the job done quickly, right? You can compare that with resultsism, black boxism, if you will, where it's like we only care about the results, to like the other end of it where it's like I'm not even going to step on a bug because that's a violation of ahimsa, right? So these, this is literally just ground up basic metaphysics, that the fundamental ground of human experience is self-interest, and then the next level is reciprocal self-interest, which you could describe as reciprocal self-interest, which you can also describe as morality, which is, I think the best definition is just consideration of others, because it just axiomatizes self-orientation. And then if you're in that direction of more reciprocal self-interest, you can start to argue you have more morality. The
your
starting
dharma.
point.
Means if you have dharma to reciprocate or act according to your family, according to your neighbors, according to the people that you have increased association with or historical association with, versus so to say your overall dharma towards all of humanity, and in a monotheistic outlook where factually God is in everybody everywhere, and like Lord Chaitanya, when it was 8 verses, is saying something that's equal to everything. I mean, the verse in Bhagavad Gita that that the person is equal to all, equal to wise and dumb, young and old, pretty and ugly, and but your personal dharma, you could term it in friendships, relations. If you have a wife, you have a family, you have your neighborhood, community, you have stronger dharma if your close family member needs help than if someone you never met needs help, even though you do have some level of dharma towards all of humanity, versus your outlook, and the questions of friend. What does friend mean? The Talmud has a few different, the famous Kavrusa or Masusa, friendship or death. And the Talmud says, unless you have a friend like Eob's friends, Job's friends, you don't have friends. And Job's friends, when he was in his suffering, traveled hundreds of miles to console him, and saying that your friends are deemed by being there for in your time of need. So Job, who was a very wealthy man, who basically had everything, and then God took that all away from him to where he was poverty stricken and in serious sickness, that his friends were the people that were still there for him in his need after he lost all of his wealth and health. That is demonstrative of, just like saying, I don't want to be tortured. I don't think I would curse my maker even if I was tortured to death. But it could be that if I started to be tortured to death, I would curse my maker, God forbid. I don't, so I pray not to be tested in that type situation, to say, I pray that my suffering doesn't increase, that I would really be in a situation to see who my true friends are. And, people who went through World War II, or various things that, lost their wealth, or situations where people had to risk their life just for your own survival, to really test people. And then the Talmud has another statement where it says, Chavrusa Talmud Chacham, that really only a sage is your true friend. That like your friends that you hang out with and go to parties or talk with, they're not really your friends. Your friend is the wise man. And there you're probably looking at the ultimate value proposition, because only the wise man really cares for your soul. And your friends you might like and think are your friends, they're not really looking out for your best interest. They don't even know how to look out for your best interest. Only the guru, only the wise person that understands karma at a higher level is capable of being your real friend, because they're the only one that could really offer the true value proposition to you.
If you see it in those terms, most people don't. But I agree, it's
I
a
just mentioned the two statements in
wise,
the poem
it's
about
wise
friendship.
perspective to take.
Those
I
are the
want to
two
hear from
statements
Krabby
in the
because I
poem
feel
that-
like we haven't heard from him in a really long time. He's just sitting there patiently. So if you had anything you wanted to contribute
No, I'm
coming on.
just kind of enjoying. I'm just kind of enjoying the conversation. I mean, it really, you can specify what is friendship, but the question actually is what is love, right? If we're talking about foundationally what is motivating these kinds of non-transactional relationships, and I don't know Doovid's position on biological determinism, but I imagine
I said soul
that.
determinism. The Lubavitch Rebbe's writings, that mean love is determined possibly from past lives, but it's some sort of soul determinism that's beyond free will, who you like, who you love, that it's not something you control. And, you know, like you, two people are brought before you, one you like, one you don't like. And there's really nothing cognitively within our own free will that decided that.
Sure, but are you looking
Similar
this
to biological determinism, and I mean, you could, like, God forbid, it was like sexual determinism. He's okay, one woman, you know, gives you an erection and another woman doesn't, versus some sort of soul determinism where you're saying like, oh, I have an arousal in my heart to like one person or love one person, and then in my heart to be indifferent or even to dislike another person. And I would put that as a function of the soul. But in practicality, it might be the same as biological determinism. You know, to say if it came from past lives or something like that, that on a practical level, that it's very similar to biological determinism.
Right. Well, I was just, this spun me off, and I was actually thinking about the rat utopia, and I was thinking about, I mean, even from, I mean, I agree with you about the soul for sure, but even from a biological determinist perspective, even from the materialist perspective, there are these things that the non-transactional social relationship gives you that once it decays, you get, well, what you got in the rat utopia, you get a complete decay of the psyche of the rat because they have no social relationships and they can't foresee a future in which they are, you know, in which their kids are happy, basically. And so, you know, there's many theories about why, but there are things that you gain from these non-transactional relationships. And I'm not saying you personally, but just in the general, I think.
If you aspire to be a sage, if you're talking about practical day-to-day life versus someone who, you know, sort of say aspires to be a sage, and you're saying if you like the person who aspires to be a sage, and you're saying that friendships aren't for sages in the way
Do
that,
not aspire to be a sage. It is so rich.
Well, who is to say that friendship is not allowed under the purview of sagehood, right?
I'm saying not allowed, but it's saying that to look at the world in a more truthful way, that your average person doesn't say. I mean, I tell the famous story of the Chafetz Chaim, Rav Yisrael Meir Kagan, who wrote the book on Lashon Hora, not saying bad things about other people. And it said once that he was going to another town, and similar to the story I told at the beginning of the Sadi Gaon, who was staying at the inn and was low key, and the person didn't recognize him as the great sage and just treated him like a regular person until in the morning all these people were crowded around to wait to hear what he had to say. The Chafetz Chaim was traveling in the train, and he sat next to a very rude Jew who did all these annoying things and was disrespectful. And then when they got out of the train, the guy saw that there were hundreds of people waiting to listen to this sage that he was sitting next to, and had been so disrespectful. And the story goes on that the Chafetz Chaim, I think, that people follow him and find out who this person was, and he went out of his way to help this person. I think in the story, the guy was trying to become a butcher and he wasn't being successful, so the sage took him under his wing, and he personally trained him to make sure that he would be successful. And at a certain point, after the person had became successful, he thanks him, and then it hits him, his cognition hits him, is like, wow, I sat next to you on the train and I disrespected you so much. I was so treated you so improperly. Why'd you help me so much? And the Chafetz Chaim tells them that honestly, when you disrespected me so much in the train, I had hatred in my heart for you, and I knew the seriousness of the sin of having hatred in my heart. And this story for a fellow Jew, that it's serious sin to have hatred in your heart for a fellow Jew, that he wanted to get rid of this serious sin of having hatred in his heart for a fellow Jew, that he tried to have vested interest in the man's success. So he went out of his way that the person would be successful. So in this case, the sage quality is that he goes out of his way to help the person who treated him so poorly because it caused hatred in his heart and because he wanted to get rid of that hatred in his heart. So saying that the sage quality of that cares about purifying the heart and getting rid of hatred in his heart, and that would go to this great effort to help this person that was so disrespectful to him, in order that he could diminish this little hatred that he had in his heart. Saying what someone who desires to be a sage as your average person. You're saying your average person isn't going to go out of their way to help someone that was mean to them. Your average person, saying
Well, they say kill them with kindness, so maybe it is happening more than you
what
think.
might happen in some ways is a strategy, but it's saying that if the sage that would internally look and say that this person caused me to have hatred in my heart, therefore I have to rectify this hatred in my heart, and see to it that this person has a prosperous life, even though I hate them. As opposed, saying that that's only a sage, so to say, would do that. That's why there's stories of the sages, because no average person, no person in the right mind would go out of their way to help someone that mistreated them. And so that's the difference between a sage and the average person. And
yeah,
if you're looking at what is truth, and you're going to say that the sage is closer to truth than your average person. So your average person, like if you just look in school, and so like my father, not necessarily like a religious sage, but just when I was in university, like, you're not there to make friends, you're there to get an education. Or even say like, these people do not really like you, they're not really your friends. So like you're in school and you're going to the parties and your social life, and saying that's all fake, those people aren't really your friends, they don't really like you. And you get your education, I don't care if no one likes you, I don't care if you have any friends. And the payoff at the end, maybe you do good in school, you get to become a doctor, versus if you had a good social life and you were part of the social club, and maybe you had a lot of forbidden sexual relations and went to a bunch of parties, and so on and so on. But at the end of the day, you didn't take your education seriously, and it turns out that no, those people weren't really your friends. And after you finished university or high school, and that social circle fell apart, and you didn't really keep up with those people, and they wouldn't be useful as your friends. And then even as a person of duty, you're saying like, no, I'm a doctor, I'm a responsible person, I run a business, I take care of my responsibilities. Like, I don't hang out with friends, I don't have time for friends. And maybe my fellow doctors, the people I work with, I'm friendly with them in that way, as the person's like the social circle, like the high school, the club that you were in high school, in the friendships that over the years diminish and prove to not be that meaningful. And so the sage, maybe knew that the whole time. The sage, maybe told you that the whole time, but your average person, that's too much for them to handle. Tell them those people aren't really your friends. Those people do not really have your best interest in mind. He was like, take it easy. I just want to go to the party and have a good time, which is life in general. So, so the sage telling you take life more seriously, to your average person saying like, take it easy. I just want to have a little fun. I just want to go out and hang out with my friends.
Live by
And the sage said,
principle
like,
is what
those
makes you
guys aren't your
happy.
friends. Those people aren't really your friends. Those people do not have your best interest in mind.
Yeah, and then you end up being the messenger that gets shot. It's like, no thanks. But there's a lot of truth to what you said about living by principle. You didn't say that today, but yeah, I mean, if you are more to principle, then that's where you can be free from the hatred, I guess, that just shackles everybody.
I'm gonna really have to think about that, Doovid. I'm gonna really meditate on that one. I do
If you
see a
want to
lot
put
of
in a
light.
temporary, you remember maybe people don't even want like A Bronx Tale with Leonardo DiCaprio. You've seen that movie?
Oh,
I
this
don't
sounds
think so.
familiar. I don't think I've seen it.
You guys are in too young in America. Maybe someone in the chat has seen it, but I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio gets recruited by the mafia, but he tells them like don't hang out with your friends. They're losers. I'm sorry, your friends are losers. Like you're meant for bigger things, and in order for you to see these bigger things, you have to realize that your friends are losers and don't hang out with them anymore. And but I mean it's a common to like a Pygmalion project, My Fair Lady, any type thing where you're taking someone of low birth and trying like I was saying, like at the club, you're saying like, okay, you come, but you got to dump your friends behind you. You're saying like, I'm going to cut you in on something that is like most people couldn't even fathom. Um, but you have to dump all your friends because they're losers. They're not cut out for it. I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you in on this, but I'm sorry. It's going to require you to dump all your friends because they're losers and they're not cut out for this.
I have to go and eat dinner and prepare for tomorrow. I just
Thanks
ripped
for
out my
joining
headphones,
us.
pardon. But I
hope you had a good time.
I'm not saying that's what a sage would say. A sage
When
would
you get
probably
back
be
to
reasonable.
having
It would say, okay, you took low birth, and doesn't mean in order to. I mean, I'm going to say what your relative, everyone took low birth, but we're saying like no, like I want to achieve greatness, that you're going to have to sever yourself from your basic context, the kids you grew up with, the kids that went on to be average, and so when you were friends as a kid, most of the people that you were friends with as a kid are going to go on to be average, and you be a good person. You say, I'm still friends with the average people I grew up with, even if you achieve greatness, and say like, no, I'm still friends with the average people that I grew up with, and I still treat them like equals, even though like in theory I went on to greatness and they went on to average things.
I'm going to meditate on that. Before I go though, I was thinking this week, Doovid, I wanted to ask you. I've seen a lot of things linking, for instance, the biblical flood stories with older flood stories, and this idea of Nephilim.
The
Jennifer
fallen
said
Nephilim
She
in
mentioned,
Hebrew means
yeah.
the fallen ones.
Right. What is your perspective, perhaps even from like even just like a purely materialist anthropology perspective? Do you think that? Well, what are the Nephilim? That's what I want to know.
Well, I mean, it could be us, meaning like our souls, that we came from a higher source and we're the fallen ones, or there could be entities that we deal with, like I was mentioning. I took low birth, but the Nephilim, fallen one that is going to see to me as my equal and raise me up, and the reason why he's on my level is because he's a fallen one. And so, Kabbalistically, or even just saying we're all Nephilim because the soul entering the body is a fallen state. And then on a practical level, like high or low birth, that people who took high birth and fall down, but they could also be your path. So saying, I'm just a poor boy from a poor family, nobody cares about me. But there's someone who took high birth that messed up their life, and now they're an equal with me, and they could tell me about how things are on the other side of the tracks because they're fallen. And any level we could be fallen, saying that that I've worked on myself and I've reached stages of realizations. And like I was saying, I don't act on my feelings. I don't do what my heart desires or what my eyes see. That you could be fallen, and all of a sudden, I become weak and start acting on my heart's desires, and become fallen. Versus like a spiritual approach where you're talking about like higher forces that teach us this, like Joseph Campbell of the hero's journey, like that some higher force is going to come and teach you some special sort of wisdom, and then with that special sort of wisdom, you're going to be able to re-enter the surroundings that you came from and achieve a different result with this new source of wisdom or ability that you gained that the Nephilim gave you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I've enjoyed tonight. Everyone have a nice evening. I probably won't be on this stream or any others for maybe a bit. So good hearing from you, and good evening. God bless.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Be
Check
sure
back
to-
and
We'll
you know,
watch your videos and be in touch whenever you're back to civilization.
you have stability. I mean, saying that you have, so to say, people more experienced that are advising you, and then people less experienced that are so to say, if you look at like a path that you probably are better off maintaining your friendships with the people you grew up with and the people on various levels, and you could test your wisdom by sharing it with other people, and then you could also see the people who rejected your wisdom, that you could still remain friendships or have reciprocal value relations with with people across the spectrum, young, old, poor, rich, smart, dumb, that you could have successful relationships really with everybody across the spectrum. And it's usually pyramidal, that you can't really have only friends who are elite. So the majority of your friends and associates are going to be towards the bottom of the pyramid. So you're going to have more poor friends than rich friends. You're going to have more dumb friends than smart friends.
See you later. Thanks for joining. Nice.
So I want to wrap up. Again, we had smaller viewers. It's hard to tell where the viewership is coming from, the numbers. Maybe Adam Green was on tonight with Christopher Van Jerkness. I'm not sure if those are the type of people that watch. Or whatever.
I haven't thought about it.
It's tough to tell by the numbers or something like who's in the chat. But did you have any?
Just the diehards.
I mean, if you have a karma, like you're saying that like the tikkun of why my birth, my soul entered my body in the place, bloodline, the time, location, bloodline, various factors that from the Hebrew perspective, like the tikkun olam, in terms of reincarnation or the transmigration of the souls, that I had a specific task to carry out, and God determinatively put me in the family, in the place and time that was necessary to carry out my specific fixing correction of the world that I was supposed to do, and that's inclusive of the not just the bloodline, but the people I knew as a kid, and the associations that I've built up, and that there is some sort of higher karma. So like like the Joseph Campbell hero's journey and the songs that I sing, that you have your normal surrounding, and then you're taken out of the surrounding and given some sort of special wisdom, and then you return to that same surrounding and are capable of affecting some sort of change with that new special wisdom. And you could look at that like the Tikkun Olam process in Judaism, the repentance process, and even friendships. That there's no reason saying that you have to lose friendships. You say I'm friends. Like as you get older, maybe what you do with your friends, or you spend less time with your friends, that the things like partying or hanging out, or even just having conversations. But it's usually healthy to have friends across the spectrum. Like I say, you have young, old, rich, poor, dumb, smart, And you could be part of clubs or circles. Like if you're a doctor, you might be part of a club that has a bunch of doctors. Like if you're a Jew, you might go to synagogue with a bunch of Jews, or Hindu, you go to yoga with a bunch of Hindus, or engineer or whatever society, like the chess club with other chess players, or whatever grouping that you find people with similar interests. But your karma is usually better off widespread, where you have just average people across average fields that are representative of society, the city, and the surroundings. And a lot of times it's karma in a story. Like, oh, I have a friend and he's just he's a cook, or he works at some restaurant. I have a friend who does construction. I have a friend who's an accountant, so on and so on. And there's some sort of karmatic, how you met this person, how your karma became attached, and how that's built over a period of time. And could be a value proposition, and sometimes it's negative. Like, this is the guy who beat me up in third grade, and now we're friends. And sometimes things move up and down. But really, it's a pretty important issue, and it's quite complicated. The question of what friendship is. I mentioned in Chovos Halevavos, Duties of the Heart, King Solomon, Ecclesiastics, points towards the conclusion that really there is no such thing as friendship. Friendships for for the weak-minded, and that better-minded people don't see see that friendship doesn't really exist. But it doesn't mean that you could skirt the responsibility and cheat and be wrong to people, and just for the sake of self-analysis. Like, you don't necessarily know what's on other people's heart. You don't even know what's on your own heart. And so, like, theoretically, as it doesn't even matter if me and Jennifer are friends, and saying that you could argue, like, no, it doesn't
You
matter.
can learn more if you have fond feelings towards me, because all the bad feelings are going to just be sticks in the mud on the path towards greater joy. I
Well,
mean, you
saying
can
I'm
bottleneck
largely
your
an
own enlightenment, right?
unemotional person, that I don't act on feelings. So, like, my feelings
We all
are,
have feelings, Doovid.
well, I mean, some people are more emotional than others,
The
and
whole thing that drives you to principle, that's a feeling. It compels you to abide by principle. That's your feeling right there. Just because it's stoic doesn't make it not a feeling.
yeah, I'm saying there's duty and responsibility, and even if you have feeling, to say that I'm going to go with duty and responsibility, even if it's opposite my feeling, and saying that's
Well, what I'm saying is
that's
that your feeling
that's the
matters
sage.
because it's part of consciousness.
That's the sage enlightened. We're saying that's the meditative quality, where you examine your own feelings. I'm aware of my feelings. I'm aware of the thoughts that enter my mind. Like, God forbid, said, last week, Jimmy Carter, that said, God forbid, he had raped thousands of women in his mind. But like, no, he didn't treat any woman improperly in his action. Or if it's what's he thinking? I'm thinking, God forbid, thinking, I hate you, I hope you die. But what he say to the person? He said, God bless, have a good day. So it doesn't matter if the person had hatred in their heart but acted nice in reality. And what if you have hatred in your heart and you can't control it? Or saying, I have hatred in my heart but I don't act on it. And versus so they're very complicated things. And saying, people who want to be a sage, people who want to be enlightened, versus someone who wants to
That's
have the happy
metaphysically
life.
impossible. If somebody wants, then the notion of being a sage is off the table. So you can't want to be a sage, at least not if you want to succeed.
Which I desire, like the man who translated the Zohar, Reb Daniel Frisch, in his book, said that I desire for my lot to be with the righteous. So I look around in the world, and I see the clubs and the parties and the various things that are going on, and the wealthy people and the intellectual circles. My desire is that my lot is with the righteous. And sometimes it might be hard to identify the righteous, or difficult to associate with the righteous, but say my desire is that my lot is with the righteous.
Bad. Someone in the chat's asking, what's consciousness? Well, depends on the axioms. Essentially, it's the ground of observation, ground of waveform reduction. So consciousness is a process, not a thing.
You have
And
Dharma
there's two
also like
acceptable definitions, so it's a bit complicated with consciousness. The ground of perception. That's what consciousness is. Sorry, go ahead.
if you have more responsibility, you have more a necessity to be objective, fair, right person for the right job. So, it's like, okay, I ran for Congress, I won the seat in Congress, and now I'm going to hook up all the people that I like, and I'm going to screw all the people that I don't like. It's like, no, you want to be a good administrator, and you're going to choose the right people for the job, even if you don't like them. And, so like I said, supply and demand are laws, because when you run a business, when you have large amounts of wealth or property ownership in companies, these things are laws. That doesn't matter who you like. You have the right person for the job. And
Why are you fighting this so hard?
I'm not fighting. Saying that's
Doesn't
why I said,
matter who
like,
you
Jennifer
like.
gives you the poor person's interpretation of things. And I saying, if you ran, that's why I said supply and demand is a law, in the sense, if you ran a business, you know it as a law. It doesn't matter whether you like the person or not. There might be a little psychological factor, like obviously you don't want to go to work today.
I'm sorry, but
and
it
have,
actually does make a difference, and I'm not going to say why because you're not going to believe me, but I can't endorse that statement.
yeah, but saying that's the poor person's advice
Okay.
on reality. So
Tell
if
yourself
you're saying
whatever
you
you
run a
want.
business
Oh,
or
good.
have larger amounts of responsibility,
Sure.
it's less and less. These questions. It's the right person for the job. It has
Oh,
nothing to
right
do
now,
with
I know
whether
it.
you like the person or not.
Well, I'm sorry, but this is like I am glad I'm sitting down for how like mind-meltingly ironic this is. So
Yeah, I'm saying that's why
someone in
you're
the
not
chat's
qualified
asking
for
what's
power.
consciousness.
I'm saying that if you
Thank
had a position of power, and you're saying like, no, you don't get to choose the people you like and hold back the people you don't like. You choose the people, the right people for the job, even if you don't like them.
What
And the
about if
laws
I'm
of
choosing
supply
my
and
immediate
demand,
entourage? Am I allowed to like my immediate entourage as my
entourages are
friends,
for
or does
entertainment.
it, I have to surround myself with enemies? Is that something
You have
that
to
I need to
surround
do to
yourself with the
prove
right
how
people
much
for the job.
non-dualism I have?
You have to surround yourself. I mean, that's why women aren't qualified for power in general. Because
Here we go again.
women probably can't even. Really, Jennifer's a smart person. She probably can't even fathom the reality of what I'm saying is factual. but saying that that you can't trust women in power because they're not capable.
When it's a
putting
complete sausage fest, there's serious rat utopia shit that arises.
There could be problems. They're saying that you
That's
need
a
the right
fact.
person for the job, and it's irrelevant who you like or don't like.
That
Completely
is
irrelevant.
obviously true.
And so if
But
you're in a so saying a woman
me
should
having
never be in the
friends,
position
those two
of
things are not a contradiction of each other.
but it's saying that if you were in a position of, so to say, choosing the people to administer society, it's more important to be objective, and that's where you see these economic laws come into play at a stronger level. So it's saying, okay, Jennifer doesn't have a business to run, she doesn't have wealth to invest to even think about these things. But her approach, if she did have wealth, it would diminish. If she did have a business, it wouldn't be successful because the laws of economics dictate that you have to operate a business in certain under certain practices because of the laws of economics, and that if you try just hooking up the people
There's
you
no
like.
argument against meritocracy here, so you're arguing against a position I don't have, but that's fine.
Okay, so you want to call it a week, and if you want to ramble on this, great, feel free. Or do you have anything else you
really
want to
good.
say
Thanks
to me?
for all those articles. That was great. Oh no, it's all good. Seems like we got a good 3 hours and 15 minutes. Thanks. I guess I'll just see if I got anything left on my list of stuff I want to go over that I could just ramble by myself. But I think that's it.
Okay, yeah,
Thanks
I
for
have seen
joining.
this before. I mean, I'll play back later also, but okay, have a great week, and thanks for putting this together, Jennifer, as always, and hopefully, we'll keep on moving forward, keep the value proposition. Like Doovid's a pretty emotionless type person. So, even
Oh, come on.
just asking me about these type things, you're not gonna, really, get any stimulus out of me. But and then if you do
You
get
have the
answers out of me,
desire. You have the desire. You have certain desires.
no,
Desires
I
are
mean,
motivated
I
by
told you
emotion.
the other day. I said like, no, I mean, like I look forward to my death, and
So you desire to die. And you also
Well,
desire to be, serving your community. That's
well,
emotionally driven. It's I don't see why you deny
emotions
that.
are part of my makeup. But no, I'm not driven by emotions. I mean, things are
You're a
filtered through.
stoic, but stoics in a lot of way have more emotions, right? It's like the
Well, I
Mr.
mean, they're
Burns
filtered.
illness
Everything
from
is
all the
filtered.
predecessors at the
Everything
same
is
time.
filtered through my emotion because that's the way consciousness works. But I'm not driven
No, you.
by my emotion. You're saying I'm
Oh,
driven by love of God or
okay.
fear of God in a
That's
way, but like,
emotional.
well, because that's the makeup of my soul and mentality that things are filtered through it. Like if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be alive. You say, okay, so that's why I look forward to my death, and I'll be finally free of this.
You won't be free of it when you die, but let me know when you're.
Well, I'm saying if I
stop
return to
believing that.
Godhead, I'm saying if I,
Hmm.
I'm saying that they don't want
Yeah,
to get
that's not how
reincarnated.
it works. You get enlightenment and then you're indifferent to whether you take birth. You don't get enlightenment and stop taking birth. That's a violation of the conservation laws. I don't know who is framing this question this way, but I am concerned.
Yeah, so I mean, that's why I enjoy saying like I think constantly about what's going to happen to me after I die,
When you die,
and the
it'll
internal
bubble out of
makeup,
you like
and
foam.
even I take care of my body, I take care of my responsibilities, my family. Generally, I have good relate. I was mentioning to Jennifer, much better than her, relatively. Like almost everyone I worked with generally likes working with me, wants to keep on working with me. I'm very
You know what
careful
Tums
about
is?
that, but that's not really what I think about. Like I'm
You know what
careful of
Tums is?
Thompson.
Tums, like Tums when you have tummy ache, heartburn.
Yeah,
Tums.
I've never
So you know when
taken
you put
Tums.
it in water, like little bubbles form on it?
I've never
That's
taken
what
Tums,
happens.
but yeah.
But you're aware that this is a phenomenon of like little bubbles forming on it and then slowly dissolving. That's kind of what happens to your consciousness, but its shape remains. So the core kind of node of you, the common like deformation potential of the biologically, like whatever it is, recapitulating ontology thing that you mentioned with that diagram with the convergent thing, it just sort of recedes to the seed Doovid. And then
I'm
it
a
begins
dualist. That's
the
not
breath
how
of
I see
life
it.
in
But
you.
I see that I would take a more Talmudic that the totality of the Doovid will be separated from my body and will stand judgment in a separate realm
Well,
before.
that may also be true, right? It's not a strictly one thing only is true. More than one, multiple truths, right? Could all be simultaneously happening.
Yeah,
I never said there wasn't judgment, right? Like I think judgment, it's pretty clear some type of judgment is pretty much part of how things work.
Okay, so feel free to ramble, and we'll be in touch, and hopefully look forward to we can review next week, even if Krabby's been coming on, but even there's no guest, just keep up with the researchers, and that's the main thing that keeps the show interesting going. I think me and Jennifer, the value proposition of continuing the research. So thanks for doing it. Have a great week.
See you soon. Thanks everyone for joining. I don't really have anything that's coming to mind right now, so I got like a bunch of like half-done diagrams. So that would probably be better to just look at in a separate stream. So, wow, these notes are a mess. So unless there's more questions, I will say goodbye and hopefully talk to everyone real soon. Whoops. Bye-bye.
I mean, so to say, a worthless opinion of.
It's so important that she can't be told, she won't be told that it's wrong. And
bringing it back to Church of Entropy and her attack dog Gandalf the White.
Why don't you learn to shut up and fuck your goddamn logic?
they control the media, and the media is capable of making the sheeple believe in anything.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, we've had these streams, and I've been doing Church of Entropy, and she's been bringing on new people, and like we did those streams on like stream etiquette. We walked through like the technology.
I know.
I have like very strongly negative opinions of the kind of Brundle clique.
Is she trying to garner herself cult prestige by associating herself with a retard?